they already were.
Me too. Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by No House Advantage. Welcome back from the weekend. Hopefully you had a good one. Monday, little 6-game action. Utah giving us a lot to talk about. We'll get to that one later in the show. But first things first, happy to have you guys with us. As always, watching the preeminent NBA stream every single night right on the Stokastic YouTube channel. I'm Dave Loughran, _D. Joined by Adam Scherer. Follow the man at Ship My Money DFS. What's happening, bro?
So, man, how was your weekend?
It was tame. It kind of, I'm almost, humiliated to talk about it. I hardly did anything. I
didn't do a lot either.
No?
I went, so I didn't go back out after our show Friday. So I didn't go out for St. Patrick's Day. Then Saturday, I went to a friend's house that I hadn't seen in a while to watch the Maryland game. They were having some people over. So we did that. Didn't do anything yesterday. It was a really tame weekend.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, just kind of laid back. But I will tell you this much. Waking up in the morning is when you're like, you know what? Sometimes not doing anything the night before feels pretty good.
Yeah, it's always so nice to wake up and be like, oh, I feel good. I don't have to worry about feeling like shit during, especially when you have a strategy show in the morning.
Right. That I have them on Sunday, or I take Jordan to this mini gymnastics class on Saturday. I've had a couple times where I'm just like, oh no, dragging to get to that, because you have to run around with them. She's only two.
Right.
You don't just sit in a corner and watch them. You have to be fully engaged.
Yeah, I couldn't do the kid thing, but safe to say neither of us had as good a weekend as Josh.
Yeah, how about that, man? Big
win. I told him on the show this morning. It was nice. All the years I've been working with him, I can finally congratulate him on a win.
Well, there it is. And the crazy thing is he needed a lot, not a lot, but he needed Edwards to win. But then it was he got the point deducted and it looked like he might not win. And it looked like it could have been a draw. I mean, the sweat waiting for that decision must have been insane.
Yeah, I wasn't watching the fights anymore because my highest owned guy had lost from a non-contact injury already. So I just given up. But I knew what Josh needed. And he's DMing me saying that he's pretty sure it's a draw. On Twitter, I saw a lot of people saying it was a draw. I saw Helwani saying that Leon Edwards was winning. So I kind of I wasn't sweating it watching it, but I was sweating it via what Josh was messaging me. And he was not enjoying it.
Yeah, no, not at all. Sportswiz said Josh starts manscaping, immediately takes down a GPP. You love to see it. And I will say, I had a call today. We may have Manscaped back with us in the very near future. So prepare yourselves for that. Should be good stuff coming down the pike. But anyway, yeah, congrats again to Josh. I mentioned it yesterday. But we got 6 games to talk about. Oh, damn, look at already up over 100. We're at 114 likes already. See? For some reason, coming out of the weekend, Monday, just oddly enough, ushers in some people that feel like being generous. If you haven't done so, take a single second, hit that thumbs up, show us some love, atone for your sins around here, and wash yourselves clean of that nasty stench. And bow down before the YouTube overlords. We can use all the help we could get around here to help keep the lights on, and all of it goes a long way. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask. But appreciate you guys in advance. I know we'll get there as we always do. Subscribe to the channel too. And if you have the opportunity to, say hi in chat. Join if you want. You got the join down there. Get the badges, the custom emojis, the free super chats each month, all that fun stuff. Let's get into it. All right. Well, Indy, Charlotte. 233.5 total. Sorry, Indy 2-point favorites here. Just diving straight into this one. Actually, let me ask you this before we do, because I always try and gauge your thoughts out of the gate. You have no Luka today. We're still waiting on Kyrie Irving. A few other notable injuries. Markkanen's out. Ja's still out. We'll see Anthony Edwards. But is this a game just given the Utah news where we can kind of go stars and scrubs? Or how funneled are you going to be into the very same lineups if that's the only great value team on the slate?
Yeah, I mean, so for one, there's not really stars on this slate. You have Embiid. Yeah. He's the only guy north of 10-4 on DraftKings. So you're just naturally going to end up somewhat balanced because you don't have Giannis, Jokic, those guys. Luka's not playing.
The bonus
But
has been lately, though. He's just not priced like one.
well, right. Yeah, I meant salary wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is going to be value. We know we have Utah with no Larry Markkinen and no Jordan Clarkson. You already have some mispricings on Memphis, where we also could be without Jaren Jackson. You have cheap pricing on just some other guys as well. But then we also have this Houston news pending where we know Jayshawn Tate is out, but you have Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green both questionable. They are both guys that are underpriced if they're in, and if they're out, it opens up a bunch more from Houston. So I think it's pretty safe to say that one way or the other, we're going to have some high scoring lineups tonight, and it's going to be pretty easy to build good lineups.
Well, let's do it. Indy and Charlotte. So you got the Pacers coming into Charlotte. Now, this one does have some question marks. Mathurin did go through shoot around. He's questionable. Duarte, Isaiah Jackson as well. Halliburton remains out right now. So just looking at this spot, obviously it's a good matchup for both teams. Some of the price points are going to be slightly prohibitive here. I think they'll suppress ownership. Like McConnell's at 10%, but he's 6,100 on DraftKings. So some of these salaries are a little bit difficult. But then again, if Mathurin somehow doesn't play on a team that doesn't really need to win basketball games right now, maybe that mixes some things up. Let's start at the top, though, with Miles Turner. How many minutes are you projecting him for today, first and foremost?
28 to 30, I think, is where you can feel pretty comfortable with him. We got about 29 last game. That was a game that blew out. He would have played a bit more. The game before that, he played 28 despite not losing any minutes. So I think 28 to 30 is a good range for him.
Okay. Do you want to approach him with confidence today? Because, I mean, look, it is a good spot against this makeshift Charlotte front court. It's just a matter of, do we get enough run from Miles Turner at a, $7K plus price point to justify it?
Yeah, I think he's a good play here. I mean, it is a good spot. The reason that I think he's good and not great is really just the number of other options at the position. You have Embiid at the top. You have Sabonis as a pay-up option. You have a cheap Nick Richards on the other side of this game. You have a cheap Xavier Tillman from Memphis, who may or may not be playing with out Jaren Jackson. You have just so many good. You have Rudy Gobert or Naz Reid, but I'm assuming Rudy Gobert. You have so many good center plays you can get to that it's just one of those slates where you shouldn't be seeing tons of ownership go to any of them individually. But Turner is still clearly a good play here. Good matchup against Charlotte. You get the block upside with him. Obviously, he's a capable scorer as well. And his price tag did come down a little bit. He was, I think, 7,800 or so last slate. So you have seen a little bit of a discount as well.
Okay. Yeah. And once in a while, he knocks down 8 3-pointers, Adam.
Yeah.
Few and far between. It is funny to see those type of outlier games from bigs, and then people just assume it can keep happening. Hasn't been the case. Wasn't the case with Joe Val last year when it happened, and a bunch of these others. But, he did get up 7 threes just a couple games ago. So it is interesting to see that that's in the arsenal if you need it. 7,300, I guess, seems doable. What happens when you get past him? Like, McConnell should play 26 or so, 27, 28 maybe minutes off the bench, and he'll be involved. He's a quality per minute guy. Price is up north of 6K now, though. Yeah,
it's just Indiana has some good plays, but they don't have any one guy that stands out as great. We are also still waiting on news here with Chris Duarte and Mathurin questionable, like you said. If they're out, it opens up more minutes for guys like Jordan Nwora, Aaron Nesmith, where they could potentially become playable in a good matchup as well. But if we assume that Duarte and Mathurin are going to be in and taking minutes from this rotation, McConnell's probably giving you like 27, 28 minutes. He's averaged around there in the games he's come off the bench without Halliburton this year. He's over a fantasy point per minute guy. He's also up to 6,100. So not to say he can't pay that salary off, but there is some risk there. It's not the free square that it was when he was 5K or whatever the first game that Halliburton missed. Buddy Hield at 6,600 should play 32 to 34 minutes. It's a good matchup. He's also pretty much correctly priced. Mathurin, shooting guard, small forward at 4,900. If he gives you 26, 28 minutes off the bench, certainly could get there. But there's no one guy that you're looking at and saying, like, this guy is clearly a top option at his position above everything else on this slate.
Any interest in somebody like Nembhard if you get another 37 or so minutes from him as a starter?
Sort of. So, I think you would need Duarte and Mathurin to be out to project that many minutes from him.
Yeah, for sure.
But he's also up to 6,100. We know that he doesn't produce at quite the same level when McConnell's in, whenever they share the floor. He takes a backseat to McConnell, but they have been starting Nembhard with McConnell coming off the bench. So clearly getting plenty of minutes without him as well. If those guys are out, you can go there in tournaments. He's not getting much ownership, but it's still tough just given the drop in per minute production that you get when McConnell's in.
All right, let's keep it moving then on the Charlotte side here. This is a pretty popular team today. Before we get into the really popular chalky guys, you got 4 of them 23+% ownership right now in DraftKings. Then you got Gordon Hayward at 15. I do want to talk a little bit about Nick Richards because, last game was a blowout. They were down by 42 points at one point against the Philadelphia 76ers. Richards was in early foul trouble. That already suppressed his minutes, and then he ended up only playing like 13 minutes on the day. Game prior to that against Cleveland, never came back after his third rotation, played 23 minutes. Games prior to that, though, after Williams had gone down, 29, 30, and 32 minutes. So a weird mixture of run here, and it seems like the trajectory is facing downwards. I don't know how much stock to put in the last game because of all that foul trouble in the blowout. How many minutes do you comfortably project him for today? Because he's getting no ownership. Well, 10% ownership.
Yeah, I think 25, 26 minutes is reasonable. I'm with you. I'm completely throwing away what happened last game. Foul trouble plus a blowout. Like, you just can't read into that.
Yeah.
The big concern I have about Richards, though, is what happened 2 games ago against Cleveland.
Yeah.
That's the game where, you said he wasn't in foul trouble. He didn't come back after his third quarter rotation. And that game also ended up being a blowout. So you got garbage minutes. But down the stretch in the fourth quarter, prior to waving the white flag, you had a lineup with PJ Washington at center and Dennis Smith Jr. instead of Nick Richards. Now, maybe if this game's competitive, Richards closes and plays the final 4 minutes. We don't know that, but that's a completely reasonable lineup that the Hornets could go with, where you have Smith, Rozier, Oubre, Hayward, and Washington, and Richards just isn't out there. So that's the risk. And we did see them go to that lineup late. But at the same time, like you were saying, not a ton of ownership coming in here. Perfectly fine matchup against Indiana. In the 4 games that he has started this year, Richards has averaged 24.5 minutes per game, 1 fantasy point per minute. If he happens to give you 28, 29, 30 minutes here, he's likely to be a good play at this price. So I don't mind getting to him in tournaments a bit, but I also don't want to stake my night on it because I think the playing time here is risky. I think that there is a chance that even in a competitive game, you see PJ Washington closing at the 5.
Yeah, you're right. And against this Pacers lineup too, it wouldn't be the craziest thing either. Like, do you think maybe we wouldn't have seen that if it was Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley last game in the event that it was competitive? I don't know.
Right. I don't know. I mean, it's always tough in situations like that, especially when you're talking about a team like Charlotte. They are playing their main guys big minutes. They're not tanking, but also they're free to experiment with whatever they want.
Right.
It doesn't actually matter. So, if it was Jarrett Allen,
but they're not going anywhere either. Yeah.
Right. Like if you want to see what PJ Washington at the 5 in your closing lineup looks like against Miles Turner, you're not afraid of losing the game to find out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right, the rest of Charlotte then. I just wanted to kick it off with Richards because I think that's one of the more, difficult to kind of evaluate spots, just given not last game, but as you pointed out, that Cleveland game was very weird, coming off a bunch of 30-minute games, a trio of them before that.
Well, and the interesting thing with Richards too is you have sort of a carbon copy of him in Xavier Tillman in the Memphis game, who's getting even less ownership.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we'll get to that one in a little bit. Let's talk a little more about Charlotte, though, where you've got Oubre, Washington, Dennis Smith Jr., Terry Rozier. All of these guys very popular today against the Pacers.
Yeah, I mean, they all just look really good. I mentioned it a second ago, but even though Charlotte has nothing to play for, they're playing their starters big minutes. And as long as this game's competitive, you should be getting 36+ minutes from Kelly Oubre, from Terry Rozier. If Washington avoids foul trouble, you're probably getting 34 to 36. Hayward should give you 34 to 36. Dennis Smith Jr. really could be anywhere between like 24 and north of 30. He's one, Josh and I talked about it this morning. I don't think it's a terrible idea to set a rule for like a max 2 of PJ Washington, Dennis Smith Jr., and Nick Richards, just because I expect the closing lineup to be in a competitive game, Oubre, Rozier, Hayward, and then 2 of those guys, 2 of the remaining guys. So at 5K, Dennis Smith Jr. certainly is not a bad play. The 26% ownership's a little bit scary because if you do happen to get that 24 or 25 minute game, he may not put up a good enough score for you to get there. But if you get him, in a closing lineup where he plays 30 minutes for really any reason, he can pay off that price tag pretty easily. So I like Oubre, Smith, Washington, Rozier, Hayward, Richards. Like all 6 of those guys look like strong plays. I think the top plays are Oubre, Rozier, followed by, everybody else. But all 6 of those guys are clearly pretty good plays. And then I saw somebody mention it in chat. Last game, you did get Kai Jones playing all of the non-Nick Richards minutes, or at least all of the real non-Richards minutes before garbage time. That wasn't what we saw against Cleveland. Jones had a smaller role in that game. And keep in mind that the minutes Kai Jones played in that game are because Nick Richards was in foul trouble. But if he's going to be the backup center here at 3,400 with power forward eligibility, I don't mind taking some shots at him either at 2% owned.
Yeah, that's a weird spot because against Cleveland, he played 11 minutes before the blowout run, before the 4 minutes of blowout run. So he might only play 11 minutes again, or he splits all the minutes with Rich. I don't know. That's a tough call.
Right. Like if you get the rotation that you got last game against Philly, in the first half, Nick Richards, obviously there was foul trouble involved, but Nick Richards played about 11, 12 minutes, and Kai Jones played all of the rest of them. Kai Jones then subbed in for him early in the third, played, a normal stint, went to the bench. They went with PJ Washington at the 5 then, and then in garbage time, you had Kai Jones close. But if you get a rotation where it's like, let's say 24 minutes for Nick Richards, 18 minutes for Kai Jones, and they close with PJ Washington for 6 minutes, you could still get there with Kai Jones. But, if you get 18 minutes from Nick Richards because he's in foul trouble or something, and Kai Jones plays 22, it doesn't take a lot for him to get enough minutes to be a good play there, as long as they go with that rotation. If they go with the Cleveland one, though, where you had JT Thor getting minutes, you had, PJ Washington playing a lot of minutes at the 5, then you're in trouble because you're probably not getting enough from Kai Jones.
If Dennis Smith Jr. doesn't get to 30 minutes again, where are those minutes going? Just throughout like the rest of the starters getting a couple more minutes?
I think it's Nick Richards.
You think it would be Richards? And they just, okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Cleveland game where we saw that PJ Washington lineup in the fourth quarter, without garbage time, you were getting like 38, 39 minutes from, you're like 38 minutes from Oubre. You were going to get 39 from Rozier. You were going to get like 39 from Washington. You were going to get 34 from Hayward. It was just Nick Richards that played 22 minutes. And Dennis Smith Jr. played 32. So that's, I mentioned that group. I don't really want to set max 1 of Smith and Richards just because like that's preventing you from like, let's say Terry Rozier gets in foul trouble. Dennis Smith Jr. is good in that case too. So I think it's a little bit too restrictive, but doing something like max 2 of Washington, Smith, Richards, I think makes sense to me just because I don't expect all 3 of them to be in the closing lineup unless Oubre or Rozier is like ejected or hurt or something.
Yeah, you're right. Cause Smith played 13 minutes in the first half.
Right. Yeah. And that's been the typical rotation is getting like 24 to 26 minutes for him.
Right. All right. Let's keep it moving then. That's an important game. So we had to spend a decent amount of time on that. There will be some other spots where less time is spent. Chicago on the road against Philly today. And Jordan, I'll get to those super chats in a minute. Chicago 8.5 can never start a show off with super chats. It just doesn't work. We got to get into a rhythm here. Chicago 8.5 point dogs, 225 total. Only real thing of note here, which isn't that noteworthy. Alex Caruso questionable. Aside from that, this team is healthy. Not looking like the most appealing team today going up against the Sixers as big dogs. Are there any spots that do stand out to you, though, from a tournament perspective?
Nothing that stands out. I do think any of the main pieces, Vooch, Levine, DeRozan on Chicago, become good contrarian plays just because they're clearly not going to be priorities on this slate when you have value opening up on some teams. You have underpriced players on other teams, as I've already mentioned, and you don't really have that here. Even the Charlotte side, or Charlotte in the previous game, you had really favorable pricing. Here, it's pretty much correct pricing, 8,700 for DeRozan, who seems to be over whatever his issue was. We had seen, him kind of struggle for a month or so, but he's playing huge minutes now. He's back to playing well. Zach LaVine playing big minutes. Vooch typically giving you around 34 minutes. All of those guys are pretty much correctly priced. And so they're not getting much ownership just because you can find better values in their price ranges, but that doesn't mean that they can't go out there and give you huge, 50 plus fantasy point games and be guys that you really want in tournaments. So any of them to just sort of balance out your ownership, get you a lower owned lineup makes sense in tournaments, but I'm not building around them. They're not guys that I'm going into the slate saying, I'm going to have tons of these guys. Similarly, the Alex Caruso news does matter because he's only 3,300. And if he starts this game, he's probably playing 25, 26 minutes, and that's going to project as an okay point per dollar value at that price. If he's out, it opens up more minutes. You're probably going to see either Ayo Dosunmu or Patrick Williams start. They're both sub 4K. Kobe White is also 3,700. So if Caruso's out, it's going to allow any of Dosunmu, Williams, White, even Patrick Beverley to potentially be a little bit better, get a little bit more playing time, and be reasonable, differentiation pieces in tournaments.
The Philly side is crazy though, because you have Embiid and Harden, and then essentially nothing else. Maxi's seen a considerable price bump because James Harden missed the second leg of a back-to-back, right? And now he went from 63, then 6,600 to 7,400. I mean, that's pretty insane with Harden and Joel Embiid both in the lineup today. Tobias Harris is at $6,000 now. He's coming off a big game, of course. Once again, against a bad. They face Charlotte and then Indiana, so even Tobias Harris can have himself a decent performance against those squads, which only really one of them. But yeah, I mean, once you get past Harden and Embiid here, there's essentially nothing. I will say PJ Tucker's questionable, so maybe like Nang gets some additional minutes. It might be McDaniels. I don't know, at almost minimum salary. Oh, Tucker's confirmed out. Okay, so Tucker confirmed out. But is that enough there? Because it's not like Tucker's even been playing that many minutes recently anyway.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Tucker goes, it depends to me who replaces him. A couple of games ago, we had Jalen McDaniels get the start, and in that game, he played like 28 minutes and could have potentially played more. If it's him, I think he's a good value at 3,100. If it's Daniel House, like we saw last game, I'm not interested in going there. For one, McDaniels is the better point per minute guy. But the second thing is, if McDaniels starts, there's no guarantee House is even in the rotation for meaningful minutes. Like, you could get that 28 to 30 minute game from McDaniels, get 18, 20 minutes from George Niang. You don't even really need House to play more than a handful of minutes. McDaniels, I don't think, is going anywhere in the rotation. So if House starts, I think he just naturally ends up being projected for fewer minutes than McDaniels would be if he started, because again, I don't think that McDaniels is getting forced out of the rotation. I think House very easily could. So if McDaniel starts, I do like that value at 3,100. If it's House, I'm pretty much ignoring it. Wouldn't play McDaniels really there either. But Embiid and Harden both look very good as always. Not a ton of ownership coming into either one because they are relatively expensive. There is plenty of opportunity cost at both of their positions. On DraftKings, Harden is point guard only. So you have him competing with some really good mid-range values that we'll talk about. For Embiid, you obviously have a deep center position, but they both look good. Happy to get to either of them. Outside of that, I don't have much from this team unless McDaniel starts and I can get some of him.
Yeah, a lot of the prices are up after that last game without Harden too. So it's just going to make everything look a whole lot less appealing. Favorite play from Chicago before we move on here, just because with Philly, it's pretty easy. It's Embiid, and then you have Harden, and then there's just everything else. And we'll see who starts for Philly, as you pointed out. But do you have a preferred option from Chicago, or you kind of just sprinkle these guys in for tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really just whatever, whoever fits into your lineup. I would say Levine is probably my favorite just because he has the best positional eligibility on DraftKings with shooting guard, small forward. He's slightly less expensive than DeRozan. You have less opportunity costs for him because of his positions than you do Vooch. But any of those guys, I think it's just, whatever fits is fine. They're basically, to me, the same play where they don't project great for their salary. They don't project bad, but you're just hoping that you get the game where DeRozan decides that, it's his game to go score 1 million points, or Levine takes over the offense, or whatever it may be. So they're all very, very similar to me.
All right. Well, Minnesota's an interesting spot. We'll get there. Very interesting spot right now. We'll get there in a second. They're squaring off against the New York Knicks tonight, Madison Square Garden. Before we do, though, shout out to our sponsor, No House Advantage. You guys already know. You're getting the $100 first match deposit bonus there. You got the Pick'em contest. You got the Verse the House contest where you can 21x your entry. You see it right there at the top of the screen. All of that stuff accompanied by the Stokastic No House Advantage projections. I mean, you want to talk about a way to get like a legitimate edge on these? You use the projections, right? Because there's no juice on either side of any of these. It's just the over or the under. It's not like minus 130 to the over, anything. No, just over or under. So we've got the projections. All you need is the expected win rate. The expected win rate on these, you sort by that. When you're looking at the pick'em where you're playing against the field, I've had people in the new chalkboard app that we're all hanging out in lately for sports betting and all that good stuff, building the community over there. Chalkboard app, totally free, by the way. Link in the description. Come join us. Help us build a community out. We're giving away a lot of free shit too. But what I see one guy the other day posted, it was like 44% filled at lock for the pick'em contest, where you're playing against the field for cash. There's essentially an intentional overlay on these because No House Advantage wants to get people over there to check out their product. You're already getting 100% deposit match bonus up to $100, which is awesome. Like a legitimate deposit bonus, not some, not some drip bonus or anything. Like if you deposit 100, your account's going to show 200. But here, you're just building lineups with player props. The ones you like the most, they go at the top. They get the most points. The ones you're least confident go at the bottom. They get the fewest points. Highly inefficient numbers here for pickup, which is a good thing, okay? Like you could go over to DraftKings and see a PRA prop of like 35, and it's 24 at No House Advantage. Now, if you're playing versus the house, which has become huge over there recently, where you're playing against the house, not against anybody else other than the house, and you can do 2, 3, 4, 5, 21 extra entry, those lines are sharper, but still softer than other sports books, hands down, no doubt about that. So if you want to get in on it, get that $100 deposit match bonus, use all the tools at Stokastic to start winning. Link is in the description. Link is in chat. Check it out. No House Advantage, sponsor of the Deeper Dive. All right. Kyle B said chalkboard is the shit. Yeah, dude, we've been having fun in there. It's we're building it up. The app is free and the whole thing is free. Like if you're never going to have to pay for it. It's free. And all of us are hanging out, shooting the shit, giving out picks, giving out like the top Bet Pro and Odd Shopper picks each day. Well worth it. Even if you just want to lurk, come check it out. Is the link down there in the description, Jordan? It should be. Yeah, it is. It is. It's a free app. This app's going to be the gold standard of like sports betting and I think fantasy discussion going forward because you can sync all your books and your bets and all the box scores are in there and everything. It's sick. Check it out. Plus, we're in there. We've been in there all day. Me and Greg, Josh pops in. We got some good people in there. All right. So
I did want to clarify something on Philly. Ehrenberg just pointed it out, and he's right. Melton's probably the most likely starter for Tucker.
Probably.
2 games ago when McDaniel started, you had Harris and Tucker out. Last game, you had Harden and Tucker out. So yeah, if it's Melton, then I'm ignoring McDaniels and House, and also probably Melton.
Minnesota, Anthony Edwards. So when it comes to Edwards right now, you're looking at a situation where he goes down with the ankle. He's questionable right now. Taurean Prince got the spot start, and then you have McDaniels getting more opportunity there. This is tough because you would think that Edwards misses one more game. Maybe he doesn't, but let's talk through it on both instances. Let's say he sits. Are we going to Taurean Prince? Are we getting any Jaden McDaniels here? How do we play the absence of a high usage player in Anthony Edwards today?
Yes, I mean, we obviously were waiting on that news. He was out of his walking boot yesterday. He's currently listed as questionable. But if he's out, you expect to see more offensive production from Mike Conley. You expect to see more from Kyle Anderson and Jaden McDaniels. So they're all going to look a bit better than they would if Edwards were in. Taurean Prince likely to start in his place like he did last game. He did absolutely nothing in that game, but he did play about 30 minutes, and he's only 3,400 on DraftKings. So would still project as a good point per dollar value. If Edwards is in, all of those guys just look mediocre at best. But if he's out, they all start to look like pretty solid plays. You also would want to pay attention to the ownership gap between Taurean Prince and Nickeil Alexander-Walker and even Jordan McLaughlin, because Prince is 3,400, Alexander-Walker is 3,500, McLaughlin's 3,300. Last game, we got 30 minutes from Prince. We got about 23 from McLaughlin. We got about 18 or 19 from Alexander-Walker. I expect it to be somewhat of a hot hand situation. Like I think Prince has the most secure minutes of that group. But if Alexander Walker goes out there and is playing really well offensively and scoring the ball, I think he can get 22, 23 minutes. We saw Conley and McLaughlin play more minutes alongside each other last game as well. That's something we hadn't been seeing a lot of earlier in the year. So I think you do need to pay attention to the ownership gap between those guys, because it's not like Taurean Prince is some great point per minute guy. If you get 22 to 24 minutes from one of those guards at 1/10 the ownership of Taurean Prince, that's a spot where I think it would make sense to have a bit more of the guards and a bit less Prince.
All right. Where is that? How did I? Oh, Plan B smoothies. I spend $3 a month to say happy birthday, and Laffy don't love it. Damn. Thanks, brother. Not my birthday again. You are getting closer though. My birthday's in 6 days. So
I thought it was in March.
Oh,
What?
you did, huh?
But so I didn't know if I don't know if I don't know if I knew it was in March or if I just like think of St. Patrick's Day being in March and like conflate you just because like you're Irish.
Wait, but you just said you thought my birthday was in March.
I did, but I'm saying like I don't know. I don't know if like I knew no. I don't know if you've ever even told me when your birthday is, or if I just think Lofty's birthday and I think St. Patrick's Day.
Okay. I thought you were saying like, oh, it's in 6 days. Damn, I thought it was in March.
No,
You're
no.
saying like, oh, I thought it was in March.
Yeah, I was saying I thought it was in March,
Oh,
but I also didn't know if that's because you had told me or
got
if
you,
I
got you. No, the way it came off was I thought you were saying like, oh, damn, I thought it was in March. But
Oh,
it isn't.
I was wrong. It's in 6 days, not in March.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, March 26th. Nah, I appreciate you playing B Smoothies. I see you out there all the time, man. I appreciate you. All right. Rat, I'm planning to fade 7 p.m. games. Am I wrong? How many 7 p.m. games are there?
I mean, one of them is the Charlotte game, so probably.
Yeah, probably not the wisest decision, and you're just leaving yourself with 4. I'm not sure what the
like. I mean, I assume the reason is because he'll have maximum flexibility for Minnesota and for Houston.
Yep.
Which is fine, but it also I guess depends how many lineups you're playing. Like if you're playing one lineup and you want to go that route, sure. If you're playing a bunch, I wouldn't just X out like one of the most appealing games on the slate just for the sake of it.
Oh, Plan B Smoothies did send a super chat. It said Lobby's B-Day this week, but for me, it's always his birthday. You actually, the guy, he knew it. Yeah, all right. My fault, dude. Avi, Hayward often goes off against Indy. That was a super chat. And then Avi also had a super chat. Neesmith, Washington, or Hayward on FanDuel, Adam. So that's not a 2v2, just which of these 3? Neesmith, Washington, or Hayward on FanDuel.
So it's not Neesmith, especially if either of the questionable guys are in. Washington and Hayward are about the same price. I would lean Washington. He projects a little bit better, and he's a little bit less expensive.
Caruso is out, by the way.
Yeah, so we need that starting lineup. It'll probably either be Dosunmu or Patrick Williams, but that is going to make that group of Beverly, Dosunmu, Williams, White all a bit more appealing.
Man, Taurean Prince had a wonderful performance last time out.
0 actual points in the first half.
Yeah, 8 fantasy points in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So less than a third of a fantasy point per minute in the game. He's liable to do that.
And that's kind of what I was saying with the guards there, where, if Edwards is out and Prince is starting, clearly Prince is the first guy that you're going to play or the guy that you're probably going to play the most of out of that group because he is going to project the best based on minutes. But it's not like Taurean Prince is some great point per minute guy. This isn't, Naz Reid when he starts and you're getting like a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy playing more minutes. You're getting 0.7, 0.75 fantasy points per minute somewhere in there from Taurean Prince. So even if he plays 30 minutes, let's say like if you knew that Nickeil Alexander-Walker was going to play 22 minutes and Prince was going to play 30, you would have pretty similar expectations from those guys. The reason the projection gap is going to be a little bit wider is because some games you're going to get 18 from Alexander-Walker. Some games you're going to get 18 from Jordan McLaughlin, but knowing that one of them is likely to play 22 to 24, especially if Austin Rivers also ends up being out, then I think the ownership gap might just end up being a little bit too wide given that Prince isn't a great point per minute guy.
First player that comes to mind. Worst fantasy point per minute player in the last 5 years of Tony anyone Snell. That had what?
Tony Snell.
That's that. Yep. That's who I was going to go with as well. I believe Jordan's pinned tweet is still no, it's not anymore. Yeah. Was just saying what the fuck to a Tony Snell game where he played like 35 minutes and had 0 stats.
I mean, it's now PJ Tucker. PJ Tucker has become Tony Snell.
Yeah, I guess he has. Tony Snell was remarkable in how bad it was.
PJ Tucker has 19 starts this year with 0 points.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm getting that right because I am going from memory. I saw it recently, but pretty sure he has started 19 games and scored 0. He has 19 starts where he has scored 0 points.
Tony Snell career DraftKings points per minute 0.57. That actually seems good for him.
This season, PJ Tucker 0.44.
Is he really?
He has a 6.5% usage rate and a 4% assist percentage.
What's his rebound rate? Like
9.2. 9.2.
9.2. He has a 6% usage rate.
Yeah. He's also only averaging 1 steal per 100 possessions and 0.4 blocks per 100. So he's not even getting there on defensive stats.
Man, selfless player. Let me tell you.
Daniel House is the next lowest on the team at 0.58.
0.44 is crazy bad.
So Daniel House is basically Tony Snell. PJ Tucker is just like Tony Snell on steroids.
Yeah. Or after he stopped taking the steroids.
Right.
Dude, if that was Tony Snell on steroids, I don't want to know what regular Tony Snell looked like. All right. Anything else for Minnesota, though? Just we don't know right now. I think it's on. I don't think Edwards plays. That's just my opinion.
But yeah, I don't think he does either. Josh and I were talking about it this morning. With most players, I'd be more confident that he wasn't. Edwards is somebody that very outspokenly is clear that if he can play, he wants to play. Also, Minnesota.
He's got a flip phone, man. He's a guy.
Yeah.
That guy's a baller.
Also, Minnesota needs to win games. And then also, like, Minnesota's been very squirrely with their injury reports this year. So on the one hand, him being questionable could mean absolutely nothing, and he's just like not even with the team. But also he was questionable last game. And if you take it at face value, which again with Minnesota, you don't necessarily have to, but if you take it at face value, then he actually had a chance to play last game, despite having been in a walking boot immediately after the previous game. So I don't know. I assume he isn't going to play, but I do know he was out of his walking boot yesterday.
Emac said David O'Loughlin. Yo, funny thing, I actually took Jordan to a Celtic festival that was in our town the other day where they had like vendors and everything. And I'm wearing that Loughran shirt that I showed you, the one that had the bar on it. And some guy, he's like, Loughran. And I came up and like just shook his hand like an asshole. Like never seen the guy in my life. He's like, check that out. And it said Coach Loughran, which is funny because he actually coached at the high school that I went to, which is an hour from here. But yeah, I had no idea who I started checking. He looked very Irish, though. I don't look as Irish, but first person in my life I've ever met with my same last name. Do you know anyone in person with the same last? I've never met someone in person with my last name.
I think someone went to my elementary school with the same last name, but he was like years ahead of me, and I never met him. That might not even be true. I just like dreamt it or something, but I think that happened. Other than that, no, I haven't. Somebody like requested to follow me on Instagram recently with my last name that isn't a family member. So that confused me for a second trying to figure out who he was. But yeah, I've never actually met anybody with my last name.
I get that stuff a lot. A lot of Loughrans like start DMing you and following you and stuff just because of the name.
Yeah, I assume that's what it was. I don't know.
How do you like the Knicks today up top with Randall and Brunson?
I like Brunson a ton. He's one of the point guards that I've been referring to that is just pretty clearly underpriced. $7,400 on or $7,500 on DraftKings. He played 32 minutes last game. I assume he's going to play a little bit more than that here. And this is just somebody that is typically more expensive than that. His price tag came down because he was hurt. So I like going to him at 7,500. 14% ownership is probably a little bit low. Julius Randle looks fine at 9,200. You're getting 36 minutes or so from him. Cheap enough price tag. Don't mind getting to that. Mitchell Robinson's salaries come down as well to 4,500. His playing time has been a little bit concerning recently. You've seen Hartenstein close a couple of games. Even last game where Robinson did close, you only got 26 and a half minutes compared to the 30 to 32 that you were consistently getting for a while. But that price drop still, makes him look like another interesting 10% owned center play. So those are the three guys I'd get to, Brunson being my favorite. I have trouble getting to anything else. Josh Hart played 32 minutes last game. Barrett played 34. Typically, though, you're expecting around 32 from Barrett, around 28 from Hart. At their price tags, it makes it pretty tough to get to those salaries.
JPs, you said the promo is not working for No House Advantage. No, use the link, man. Just use the link in the description. Jordan can throw it back in chat, too. Jay, I saw that chat, or that comment, yeah. Just use the link. All right, look, we got 3 more games to go, so we can speed this up a little bit. Luke is out today. I have to ask you, do you have any feel for Hardaway or Irving? Do we have the Hardaway news yet?
No, they're both still questionable. I'm assuming Kyrie plays. I also thought Luka was going to play, but I'm assuming Kyrie plays. I have no idea on Hardaway because he was the midday downgrade with an illness.
That's the problem. It's an illness, and it's not what he was out with before returning from last game. Remember, he missed the game or whatever it was, and then he came. Didn't he come back with Irving last game?
Who?
Hardaway. I thought they both returned last game, and then now they're both questionable.
Yeah. Hardaway came off the bench last game.
Yeah.
Kyrie came back, played 38 and a half minutes. Hardaway played 27 off the bench.
Yeah. I was just saying that the fact that Hardaway's is an illness now, so it's something totally unrelated to what it was before, and that
Right.
makes
Yeah.
it
Like I never know how to handle those midday downgrades. It's not like midday downgrade because his knee is swelling up. Like when that
right.
happens, it's like, okay, he's probably not playing. But it's like, did he start feeling like shit during shoot around and was like, I don't know how long I'm going to feel like shit? Or is it going to be like Porzingis where, he gets downgraded and an hour later he's out? So I don't know what to do with him. I'm assuming Kyrie plays.
Okay. Um, Josh, I wish you wouldn't have hit. Why would you hide that comment, man? Why would that would have been the greatest atone for your sins type opportunity I ever would have had in my life, and you just absolutely blew it, man. Come on, that would have been great. You saw what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It would have been great. Plus, we're 161 likes away from 500. That would have just sent us through the roof.
I was actually in the middle of reading it to see if it was going to end with
Me too.
yeah, with getting us likes or if it was just a random message.
Me too. I thought it was a great bit that I was gonna. That's Josh. Come on, man. We could have worked with that, brother. Anyway, Josh just sent him to the shadow realm.
No, you got the mute too, Josh. Don't short sell yourself. It says by Josh Engelman.
That's what I saw too. Yeah, trying to absolve him his own self of those sins. All right. Let's assume that Irving's in. I mean, we can get to Hardaway, but if Irving's in, he's $10,000. Nice scoring output last game. Relatively tough matchup against the Grizzlies today. Do you agree with him being sub 10%?
Yeah, just because of the number of good guard plays that you have. It's certainly a good play in tournaments. 10K for call it 38 minutes of Kyrie without Luka certain does give you a very, very high ceiling. He's projected to go a bit under owned. We have a 12% chance of being optimal, 8.5% ownership. So I think he's a good tournament play in the same way that like Zach LaVine, DeRozan, those guys are good tournament plays. But James Harden, similar price tag, a little bit cheaper. You have just mispriced point guards. Like I've said a couple of times, you have the guards on Charlotte, you have Jalen Brunson, you have Tyus Jones on the other side of this game. You potentially have a $6,800 Jalen Green that we haven't gotten to yet. Steph Curry is $200 less than Kyrie. It just becomes difficult. It's one of those spots where like you could very easily sit here and say like, oh yeah, Kyrie at 8%, low owned, great play. But then you have to follow it up by saying like which of those guys I just named is not a great play and which one aren't you playing? And that's where it gets tricky. And you kind of have to realize that, yeah, okay, Kyrie's a good play, but so are a lot of other guys.
How do we, you and I discussed it at length the other day about like, yeah, if Christian Wood gets those minutes, you're probably going to want some of him. This guy just played a lot of minutes last game, a lot of minutes. Like Reggie Bullock played only 2 minutes in the second quarter. Maxey played 3 minutes in the second quarter. Christian Wood came in at 5 minutes to go in the first and played all the way through until halftime, and then played another 7, 8, 9, 10, 17 minutes in the second half as well.
Yeah, we got a 34-minute game there. I have no idea what to make of Christian Wood. Like we know Jason Kidd hates playing him for defensive reasons, but without Luka, it makes sense for him to get more minutes just because you do need more scoring. If Tim Hardaway's out, that also applies. So at this point, I think you assume he's playing, at least like mid-20s, and if he plays well, he can play more. Basically, as long as he doesn't like play his way off of the floor defensively, I think expecting 24 to 26 minutes is very reasonable, and that you have the upside to get considerably more. Very good point per minute guy. Getting 13% ownership. I don't have any issue with that ownership. I think that it's very reasonable. It doesn't strike me as, people going crazy and saying like, oh, Christian Wood's going to play 34 minutes every game. Because if you thought Christian Wood was going to play 34 minutes at 6,700 and 13% owned, you're playing him in like 60% of your lineups or something. So I think 13% is pretty much in line with an expectation of 24, 25 minutes, but knowing that if he plays well and does get more minutes, he can very quickly become a guy that you have to have.
Right. It's pretty much the way it is right now. Orad 14 said, what you said about Kyrie is why I'm fading the 7 p.m. games, Adam.
I said Kyrie. Yeah, sure. Like if you want to go that route. So I assume what he's referring to, what I said, is that if you say Kyrie's a great play, you have to decide which of those other good plays you're not playing. So yeah, if you want to just decide you're playing Kyrie over Terry Rozier and Kelly Oubre and Dennis Smith Jr. and TJ McConnell and all of those guys, fine. But it's not like that is a like, I don't want to word this like it's a bad decision or it's dumb, because it's not. Like, that's a perfectly reasonable stance, but it's not like that stance is backed up by anything. Like, it's not, there's no reason that you should just be not playing those guys unless you just decide that's what you want to do.
Anything else you want to talk about for Dallas? Or you want to talk about Memphis on the other side?
I think we can go to Memphis.
All right, let's do it. Memphis Grizzlies. Desmond Bane, Tyus Jones, Dylan Brooks. The other day, this team, what an odd game that was. I think I hit you up like, yeah, Memphis is getting shit on by the Spurs after. Remember that day where they had the price points were in the gutter and we're going, this is the worst pricing we've seen all year. Then I'm pretty sure Memphis was down by like 30 points.
Yes, I do remember.
They end up winning that game in overtime.
I remember because I needed basically that game just ended up being like everything I needed not to happening. Like, I needed a bad Desmond Bane game, I think, in best ball, and I'm like, oh, he's playing terrible. Like, they're getting blown out by the Spurs. This is awesome. And then I go back and look later. I'm like, oh, it went to overtime. And he scored 55 points. Cool. Like, there was just a bunch of that shit.
Was that the same game? Brooklyn shit all over me too, from a betting perspective. I can't remember. Not same game, same.
I think those were back-to-back days.
Oh, good. Yeah. Par for the course. All right. Well, how do you want to approach Memphis today? The prices aren't anything crazy. I got to say, Jaren Jackson's playing excellent basketball right now, dude. This guy is so good when he gets the minutes and he's not in foul trouble. I absolutely love him. Yeah.
Questionable for tonight. So that is really big news. I mean, he's one of the guys that, if you are taking the approach where you're just going to wait till, not lock guys in from the early games, that's a big piece that could help you out if he gets ruled out. But yeah, he's playing really well, and he's got a couple of things really working in his favor, because you get increased usage with no John Morant, but you also get more center minutes with no Brandon Clark. He's backing up Xavier Tillman, and that's, more production for him as well. So Jaren Jackson, 8,100. I wouldn't say he's mispriced, but I think there is still some value there. And he's only projected for about 5% ownership, probably in part because of the Q tag. So I like him in tournaments. You look at Desmond Bane at 7,800. He's just another mispriced guard. You've had some relatively disappointing games from him, games where he could have been better, but he's just getting, 32, 33 minutes. He's running backup point when Tyus Jones isn't on the floor. So you get increased assist opportunities. You get increased usage with no Morant. He looks good at that price. Dylan Brooks still looks fine at 5K. If Jaren Jackson is out, Bane and Brooks are both going to look better. Tyus Jones at 7K, playing around 34 minutes per game, averaging over a fantasy point per minute. He's going to look good, especially against a Dallas team that also cannot defend anybody. So all of those guys are going to look good. I mentioned Xavier Tillman earlier. He's 5,400, center only. He played like 32 minutes last game. Didn't play, down the stretch against Golden State because it got out of hand. But he has the potential, if he's not in foul trouble, to give you 30 to 32 minutes at very low ownership and a cheap price tag. Don't mind getting there. And if Jaren Jackson's out, I do think that solidifies Tillman's minutes a bit, because you're missing another backup center. In that case, I assume that they're going with like Kenneth Lofton as the backup and trying to play him as few minutes as they can. So if Jackson's out, I think it also benefits Tillman. If Jackson's out, you're probably getting Santi Aldama in the starting lineup at 3,700. It would open up more minutes as well, most likely, for Luke Kennard and David Roddy. It's really, really, really huge news on Jaren Jackson.
Huge news. And I will tell you one thing that makes me uncomfortable. You can speak to this. The third highest leverage score of anybody on this slate in our boom bust tool. All of our tools 50% off, by the way, link down below and in the chat and description. Everything you want, one sport, any sport, all of our tools. Wait to see the Hall of Fame segment coming up after this, dude. Monster wins, 200,000 and a whole lot more. Multiple 50Ks using these tools right. You'll see. Stick around before lock. Rock the Stokastic avatar. Get yourself up there. But yeah, 50% off everything, whether you want to do a week or a month. One sport, every sport. And there's a million sports happening right now. Like, other than the NFL, with baseball about to start up, you're going to have every sport happening, and March Madness going right now. Like, everything that you can dip in on and get tools for, even if you don't know it well, who cares? You use the tools and you become proficient. Even you learn as you go because you got the tools to guide you. So weekly, monthly, 50% off. You want to get the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, or you just want to get the lineup generator for less than $450 a week. You could do that as well, especially for those of you that are crunched on time. No better way to make lineups. In the description and chat, check it out. And if you have any questions, hit me up in DMs. They're open. I can help you out with that. But Adam, in the boom bust tool, Dylan Brooks has the third highest leverage score of any player on the slate tonight.
Yeah, and I think I get it. He's only 5K. He's small forward eligible. If Jaren Jackson's in the games that Brooks has played without Morant, but with Bane and Jackson, he's at like 0.82 DraftKings points per minute, about a 20% usage rate. So nothing crazy there. But when you compare that to the games where all three of those main pieces are in, Brooks has only put up 0.66 DraftKings points per minute with about a 17.5% usage rate in those games. So you're talking about like a 2.5% bump in usage rate, assuming Jaren Jackson plays. And if Jaren Jackson doesn't play, this offense scoring wise now, is now down to Desmond Bane, Tyus Jones, and Dylan Brooks. And Dylan Brooks is going to, at least look to get his. So one way or the other, Brooks is going to look good. If Jackson's out, he is going to get more ownership, but he's also going to look a lot better.
Samson said, "Hey Dave, can you teach us how to negotiate with a used car salesperson?" Recently, no, dude. I had a bunch of instances where my buddies who are very good at negotiating walked in to buy cars, like nice used cars, like, just used cars. And they go and they try and work them down. And the guys are like, "Listen, dude, I got 6 people that'll buy this right now if you don't want it for well above what it's worth." Like, no, sorry. Because, used car prices were up like 1,000% over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
There was no negotiating. It was like, "Do you want it? Well, I'd like it for this. All right, get the fuck out of here." Like they didn't care.
You're right.
It was crazy. It was so nuts. But yeah, no. And by the way, with these tools, it's easy to do. In all seriousness, it's easy to do because you see people winning with them. But yeah, anything else? Actually, let's move on because we only got 7 minutes to go here. Live before lock coming up after this. Warriors and Houston. Golden State Warriors on the road. What are they, like 7-600 on the road this year now after that last loss?
Yeah, but they're still double-digit favorites.
Isn't that crazy?
It is.
I was surprised with that. I kind of like taking the point.
I'd like it more if we knew the status of Jalen Green and Şengün.
Very good point. Also, Rockets second of a back-to-back.
Yeah,
they're also a bad basketball team. But yeah, Warriors 7.
But like, if they didn't have these Q tags, I would like it because they've been playing their starters so many minutes lately.
Yeah,
like, they're not tanking. They're not trying to lose games. They are playing their starters huge minutes, but they also are very thin. Where if Green and Şengün are out,
no doubt,
this team is garbage.
No, Porter played another 40 yesterday.
Right.
They lost, but they'd won 3 straight prior to that. What's the money line on Houston today? Plus 450.
Yeah.
Come hang in our chalkboard. We'll discuss that one. That's wild. But yeah, they're 11-point dogs, man. Say what you want. I mean, regardless, it doesn't make a difference if we're talking DFS here. You're just looking at the Warriors and saying, all right, well, they're outside of Andrew Wiggins. And Kevon Looney is questionable, so keep that in mind. That is kind of notable here, so keep that in mind. But that's what we have right now: is Wiggins has been out and Looney's questionable.
Yeah, good spot for Golden State. They look pretty good. The Kevon Looney news isn't massive, but it could certainly open some stuff up. Kuminga would probably move into the starting lineup. They could go a different route. They could go to Poole with Draymond at the 5. They could go to Anthony Lamb, but you probably end up seeing more minutes for Kuminga. He is up to 5,300. Lamb probably plays more if Looney is out. Poole probably plays more if Looney is out. They are both reasonably priced, guys that you can take shots on. But regardless of Looney's status, Steph Curry at 9,800 against Houston looks appealing. That's a cheaper price tag than you normally get on him. And, he's still relatively expensive, but normally the problem with Steph is it's like, oh, well, Steph has a really high ceiling, but I have to pay the same exact price as I do for like the Domantas Sabonis or, other guys in that range, Trae Young, sometimes, just 10.5K guys that Curry's not quite as good on a point per minute basis, but down at 9,800 in a really good matchup, he looks good. Draymond looks fine at 6,200, should give you around 32 minutes. If Looney is out, you're probably getting more center minutes from him, which is great. I think the lack of ownership on Klay Thompson is really interesting, given that he has shooting guard, small forward eligibility. He's only 7,100. He's likely giving you around 34 minutes if this game's competitive. He's been rebounding at a decent rate recently. We know the shooting upside that he has. He's one of the prices where I wouldn't say that he is like drastically underpriced like some of the other guys that we've mentioned, but it's a price tag that I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's cheap. And then I look at the ownership and I'm like, wow, that's really, really appealing.
So who's your favorite spot to get to for Golden State tonight?
Steph would be my favorite. If you're talking contrarian plays from Golden State, Klay is my favorite.
On the Houston side, I know it's their second of a back-to-back, so I mean, we can account for minutes there if we want. I don't necessarily know how to. Do we just give Porter 30, continue to give him 36 here? Probably, right? Like give him
Yeah, I
around
don't really
36.
see any reason not to.
Right. Huge minutes, just huge minutes for these guys. Jalen Green's price didn't it come down, I think?
Yeah, it did. I have no idea how, but it did.
Yeah, Porter's is up to 8K, but he's just playing insane minutes. I don't know. I mean, this is one of those teams that I know you and I have talked about a lot lately. Şengün is questionable, as you pointed out. Same with Tate, but the playing a ton of minutes lately. But if they're going to continue to get mid-range price points and play big minutes, I'm not really sure how we avoid them entirely.
You're going to like Houston here, regardless of who's playing. It's just a matter of who do you like, because if we just assume that Şengün and Green are in, they both look good. You're getting huge minutes from all of the starters, assuming they're not in foul trouble like Şengün tends to be. But Jalen Green at 6,800 would be one of the most mispriced guards on the slate, at least in terms of upside. Şengün at 6,700 would be another very good mid-range center option. Then you get, Kevin Porter Jr. at 8K. That's like a correct price tag, but he's still playing huge minutes and gives you a very nice ceiling. If Jalen Green is out, Kevin Porter Jr. looks even better, especially if Green and Şengün are both out. KJ Martin at 5,300, if everybody is in, looks fine, but pretty much, a correct price, but still giving you 30 to 32 minutes. Tari Eason at 4,400, if everybody is in, still looks like a pretty decent value, because we do know that you don't have Jae'Sean Tate today. That's likely to give an extra minute or two to Tari Eason. Then if you get like Şengün ruled out, you're probably getting Tari Eason starting. If Şengün gets ruled out, you're also most likely getting Jabari Smith at the 5, which takes him from a decent contrarian tournament flyer to a pretty good play at 6,600. There's going to be really good plays on this team. You have a 3K Daishan Nix, who could potentially start if Green is out. Ty Washington is back with the team as well. But there's going to be good plays from Houston. It's just a matter of, who is in.
All right. Well, with Sacramento and Utah, this is where it gets interesting. By the way, 51 likes to 500. We got 2 minutes to get there. Of the 2,600 people out there, I know there are now 50 of you generous enough, kind enough, loving enough to say, hey, I'm going to take a second. I'm going to hit that thumbs up for you guys to get you over that completely arbitrary number that means nothing outside of boosting my ego. All right, Sacramento. Let's rip through this kind of quickly, because I still want to spend a few minutes on Utah, just given all the news. I'm just going to floor's yours here, and then I want to spend a few minutes on Utah. We can go a minute or two over. We'll start with Sacramento and just get through them, because that's a lot more clear cut. I know we're waiting on Herter, but that's more clear cut than this Utah thing.
Yeah. So we have Herter questionable and Lyles questionable. If they're both out, we got Kessler Edwards starting last game. You got Terrence Davis playing more minutes than Edwards. If they're both out, Davis is fine in tournaments for his upside. Keep in mind, he's extremely risky. He's found himself behind Kessler Edwards in the rotation. 2 games ago when Kevin Herter got hurt, Davis started the second half, still only played 5 minutes. They went to a lot of Kessler Edwards. So he's going to be risky, but if he plays well, he can soak up minutes. He is a good point per minute guy. If those guys are out, or if either of them are out, it should solidify playing time for Keegan Murray as well, who's pretty inexpensive. We know that Harrison Barnes is pretty much always giving you 34 to 36 minutes. So he looks okay regardless, but those guys do matter, at least in terms of, being able to take shots at, a Malik Monk or Keegan Murray or potentially Terrence Davis. But the parts that are going to stand out no matter what are $8,200 for De'Aaron Fox and $10,400 for Sabonis, particularly Fox. It's another point guard that is just like inexplicably 10% cheaper than normal in a really, really good spot against Utah. Like De'Aaron Fox quite a bit. I hope he sucks, because I really need that in best ball, but he looks really good, especially at $8,200. Domantas Sabonis is playing out of his mind. He's also playing 37, 38 minutes in competitive games. 10-4 is a very, very reasonable price on him. So those two are going to look like very good plays no matter what. Then the Herter and Lyles news just matters for what you're doing with the rest of this team.
All right, let's talk Utah here. And coming up after this, do not go anywhere. You got the boys coming up next for a little live before lock action, taking you up and through lock on the live before lock. That's Greg Ehrenberg. And that is going to be Neil Orfield on a Monday night, taking you into the slate. Last game that Lauri Markkanen missed, you had Olynyk, THT, Walker Kessler, Agbaye, and Clarkson, but now Clarkson's out. So My question to you, and this is going to be huge because we're already seeing a lot of ownership here. Is it Fontecchio or is it like Dunn? What does the starting lineup look like to you today? Is it Agbaji? Like what do you think the starting lineup looks like tonight? You had to take a breath there.
Yeah. So, because I'm trying to pull up the last time that it happened, because it happened recently, I think. Oh, it didn't.
Wait, with Markkanen and Clarkson?
Right. No. So it's they were alternating. It's the only time it's happened this year was back in December, where they were both out.
Right.
Yeah. So my guess is they go Fontecchio. I just wanted to try and have a better reason for that guess than I don't know. I guess they go Fontecchio. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted it to be a little bit more of an educated guess, but just based on the way the rotations have gone recently, Fontecchio seems like the next guy up. Chris Dunn and Taylor Horton-Tucker haven't been playing minutes alongside each other recently, so that makes me think it would be weird if they start them. If they do start Chris Dunn, you can feel very confident in his playing time and Horton-Tucker's playing time, but I'm assuming they'll go to Fontecchio, and in that case, you probably are getting a bunch of minutes for Agbaji. You're probably getting a bunch of minutes for Fontecchio. They're both cheap. Neither one's a great point per minute guy, but they're both cheap. They both are completely reasonable values, similar to like how Taurean Prince is a good value if Anthony Edwards sits. I also expect that you will see some Horton-Tucker and Dunn alongside each other here just because they don't really have the luxury of limiting them to 48 minutes. So I think expecting something like 30 minutes for Horton-Tucker, 30 to 32 for Horton-Tucker, like 24 to 26 for Chris Dunn is reasonable. It makes them both look decent in a good matchup as well. Kelly Olynyk can potentially take on a bigger role offensively. He's one of the only guys on this team that actually has the capability of doing that. Walker Kessler isn't really affected by any of this news, but he is 7K and does give you a high ceiling. Rudy Gay probably isn't playing that many more minutes, but if he plays well, he could. He is 3K flat at 1/5 the ownership of Fontecchio and 1/3 the ownership of Agbaji. So I don't hate the idea of, especially in your biggest field tournaments, if you're playing a lot of lineups, mixing in some Rudy Gay and just hoping that the rotation breaks your way.
If you had, or let me, instead of asking you to prioritize these guys, let me ask you this. This is what we'll close the show with. I think this is the best way to do so. Because this is a 9:00 game, it's the last game on the slate. There's 2 7s, a 7:30, 2 8s, and then 1 9. Are there any ways to have lineups to where you can easily adjust them in this instance? Like, whether it's price points, whether it's making sure certain guys are in certain roster spots in the event that the lineup does look different than we thought, or in the event that something else pops up with Utah that we're going to want to get to on the last game of the slate?
I don't think you're going to have to worry about it too much because you're just naturally going to get to a lot of Utah. We have 5 guys on this team projected north of 20% owned. Then we also have Kessler at 10% and Gay at 8%. So you're just going to have Utah pieces. And we don't right now have questionable players here either. But if you were to get a weird starting lineup where they start Rudy Gay instead of Fontecchio, you're going to be able to just swap most of your Fontecchio to Gay because it is the last game of the night. He's going to naturally be in a forward spot. So you're going to be able to do that. It should be easy enough to just swap this around without doing anything special.
Well, appreciate you guys as always. Live before a lot coming up next. Greg and Neil going to spend plenty of time breaking down Utah and anything we didn't maybe spend as much time on as necessary, but we're in, we're out. We just hit 600 likes too. We're in business as Adam takes a sip from his British coffee mug. I mean, what are we doing, bro? That beautiful flag up there. You got an American coffee mug?
No. I mean, I have a lot of American coffee mugs. Most of them are American.
They're probably Chinese.
Fair.
We'll see you guys back here tomorrow on the Deeper Dive. Follow Adam at Ship My Money DFS. Me at Lafayette_D. Shout out to Jordan Klein for producing this one, and we'll catch you back here tomorrow. Good luck tonight, guys. Peace. Yo, what's good, everybody? We are back. We took a week off, but we are back with the Stokastic Hall of Fame, and we have some monster wins spread across this one this week. Very excited to get into it, to give away some free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum, and induct all of you fine people into the Hall of Fame. If you're trying to get in on this, get that free month, $120 value, get inducted, featured, bragged for right here in the Hall of Fame segment. All you got to do, download the Stokastic avatar, the profile picture at stokastic.com/avatar. Tweet your wins to Stokastic Hall of Fame or Stokastic HOF on Twitter. Get that free month and get inducted. just like everybody that we're going to talk about today. And we've got some huge ones, starting it off with Dylan Strickland. How about Dylan? Shipped to 50K on the first day of March Madness with a single entry, thanks to our boy Matt Kajeski. 50K up top in the 150K tourney tip-off for Dylan Strickland. Huge way to start it off today, but it only gets crazier because you have Bob Crematola, who just, I mean, when this guy goes on heaters, he goes on heaters. And he said it's officially on a heater. Got it, thanks to Stokastic and the great tools they provide. Also, many thanks to the boys for their great content on the Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock yesterday. 50K for Bob as well, or Bobby Nissan. And it looks like actually 7 entries, $5,900 in entry fees, $89,600. Another monster win for Bob. Keep it going, man. And how about our own Steve Buzzard? You think he's using these tools? I can tell you right now, he's using the Stokastic tools. Not quite Hall of Fame worthy, but anytime I can finish 5th in a Super Stack DraftKings live final, I'll take it. $200,000 to the Colts. Steve Buzzard, monster win, almost $250,000. Congrats, man. That's huge. Taking it home for Team Stokastic, or close to it. And how about our own Josh Engelman? Fun little Saturday, he says. UFC, it came down. He needed everything that he got. Came down to the wire. $80,000. Chopping first place with a couple people for $80K on Saturday afternoon. And you wonder if we have good NHL content. Well, how about Josh? How about Josh Harris? Is it Josh Day at Stokastic, apparently? Not $80K, but in the NHL streets, this is about equivalent. $5,800 for Josh as well. And then you got Noah Levinson. The Stokastic lineup generator, I told you guys, has itself another win. Thanks to Greg Ehrenberg, Eric Lindquist for the advice on all the shows at Stokastic Hall of Fame. $2,000 in the end one. Love it, man. And if you keep this one rolling, you got Joey Foley. I want to thank the Stokastic guys again, but it's been a while. All the guys and anyone I forgot. I made over $1,000 in profit last night. Here's a couple screenshots: 500, 175, 35, first, second, and 5th place. Good stuff, Joey. Keep it moving. And how about Lemons? Not a bad ROI on the jukebox last night. Not at all. 3rd place into $125. I told you guys, it could be the $20, it could be a 10 cents entry, quarter, $1. Doesn't matter. As long as you finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, you're getting in. You're getting the free month. You're getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, just like Pat Damon to wrap this one up. Thanks to Live Before Lock, gents, for helping me place 3rd out of 33,000 in this Wednesday 8K fadeaway. 25 cents into $100. Crazy return. Appreciate all you guys rocking the avatar. Enjoy the months. Enjoy the bragging rights right here in the Hall of Fame. And remember, tweet those wins to Stokastic HOF. Get that free month, and we'll see you back here next week for another edition.
I'll start with my mouth open, Jordan. What is going on, everybody, and welcome to NBA Live Before Lock, a show that I'm sure Jordan Klein is enthralled that is starting because it means that he could take a potty break. He has been dying to go use the little men's room, as he was telling us before the show, and now he can. Now he can, because we're started. We're off and running. We've hit the show. And yeah, if you guys could do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel as Jordan gets up to go use the bathroom. You don't have to take the camera with you, Jordan. All right, good. If you guys haven't done it yet, like I said, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Shout out to No House Advantage, who is the sponsor of our show today. It is Monday. I am joined by the flannel god himself, Neil Orfield. He's wearing his XFL hat today. Does that mean you had a good XFL slate over the weekend, Neil?
I had my first winning XFL weekend of the year so far. I think it's been 3 times that I've been like doubling my money or more with less than 2 minutes left in the final game of the week. And then something happens where some chalky player scores a touchdown and I end up losing half my money. So yesterday it was actually showdown on the Brahmas showdown slate. I took solo second and then tied for 3rd. So took in a little bit of money.
Nice. Love to. Who's the key player? I don't know any of the guys in the XFL, but was it a former NFL player that I may have heard the name of?
So it was one of my players was Reed Sinnett, who was the backup quarterback who they announced was starting, but a lot of people didn't see that news apparently because they had Jack Cohn in like 60% of lineups. That helped a lot. Yeah, I'd say that was the big one.
All right, there. Congrats to Neil, who has now earned his XFL hat that he wears every day, because now he could afford the XFL hat.
Exactly.
Maybe a new one coming in the future, perhaps a jersey of his favorite team. And this is going to be a busy NBA slate too, as we start to get into it, because there are so many players on the injury report. We just got news as well that Anthony Edwards is unlikely to play today. So I'm going to take that to mean is that he's not going to be active. We had Anthony Edwards, who, what was it? Friday, you declared you believed the season was going to be over. And then what happens? All of a sudden, he's not in a walking boot anymore. He was listed as questionable to play. It did always seem like he was a little bit more likely to sit than actually play. But now we've got official word that he is not going to be active. So it is nice that we're not going to be getting that, at some point post-lock or at some point later. But we still do have Rudy Gobert questionable, Naz Reid questionable, and Austin Rivers questionable for Minnesota. I brought this up a few times, but I have to ask you, because you're the resident Timberwolves fan, are these guys just going to play? I'm very tired of the injury listings.
I'm very tired of the injury listings too. I don't think I have any better information than you have on these Timberwolves. I'm a Minnesota sports fan. So like when I say Anthony Edwards probably done for the season, you have to like listen to it through the like Minnesota sports fan glass. We felt nothing but pain for my entire life since like 1991 when the Twins won the World Series, but for the most part, we've just experienced a ton of pain in my lifetime. The Lynx have been great too, but in general, Minnesota sports not so great. So I'm pessimistic, but I don't think I'm that pessimistic on Rudy Gobert. I think he's probably playing tonight.
That's how I feel as well. Same with Naz Reid. I'm not going to make any kind of contingency plans for those guys, but we've seen a few games now. Well, a few games. We've seen one game with Anthony Edwards, at really 1.5 games, and as you and I talked before, Edwards almost never misses games. We really don't have that much data to go on when he's out. He has played in 71 out of 72 of the Timberwolves games this year. But your initial feelings now that we know that Edwards is more likely than not going to be sitting today, who, if anybody, are you looking to get to from the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Yeah, so I think Taurean Prince probably gets the start again. He is only 3,400. He's going to look pretty good at 3,400. My guess is we'll project him for around 22. Maybe we have that update, but he's the primary. Like he's going to be the starter, I think, and will probably project the best for us. Outside of Taurean Prince, it's a kind of a mess. We saw Jordan McLaughlin come in and take a lot of those minutes that we thought were going to go to Nickeil Alexander-Walker last time out. I still think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is probably the more interesting play to me. He's a little bit better fantasy points per minute than Jordan McLaughlin and generally gets more minutes per game. So I think that Nickeil Alexander-Walker is still my next in line as far as the, Minnesota players who get a boost, but J-Mac obviously could get that boost. We also do see a little bit of a boost for like Jaden McDaniels, Mike Conley. Obviously, all of the starters get boosts as well, just in terms of usage. So little boosts everywhere. I think the most clear one is Taurean Prince, who will probably get 5 or 6 extra minutes at least, and then just little boost elsewhere.
Yeah, and let's look through some of the minutes from that game too, because what else do we have to work off of other than this is what the minutes everybody played in last game, assuming the starting lineups are the same. I would assume that we'd see more or less about similar minutes. And what we saw out of that last game was also, although we should also note the game was a blowout. So, right. 15 points was the final deficit. The Timberwolves lost by the starters, didn't finish the game. But with that said, we got 30 minutes out of Prince last game in a blowout shortened game. If we're going to be getting 32, 34 minutes out of a cheap player who's not the best fantasy producer in the world, but is by no means awful from a fantasy purpose either. We've got Taurean Prince this year has played, 21 minutes per game, averaging 15.5 fantasy points. Maybe a little bit worse than what I thought it was before I actually pulled up the numbers in front of me. But either way, if you're going to be giving this guy 30 minutes, then you're still looking at mid-20s fantasy points for a guy who is very cheap on both DraftKings and FanDuel. So Taurean Prince is somebody who, to echo what you had said before, I assume that I'm going to be getting exposure to him. He's a little more favorable looking on DraftKings than FanDuel, but still a good look on both sites. He's 3,400 on DK, he's 4,000 on FanDuel. And the other one too is the price point has dropped on Kyle Anderson. Kyle Anderson, who had been playing, in my estimation, well over his head for a little bit here. He has one bad game, and then DraftKings immediately moves his price back down a couple $100s. So Kyle Anderson is somebody who I'm going to want to get to over on DraftKings as well. Over on FanDuel, we've got Kyle Anderson at 7,500. It's a tougher sell for me. A lot of these guys are more expensive on FanDuel than DraftKings. It seems like FanDuel went out and priced players assuming that Edwards was not going to play, Whereas DraftKings went out and it's like, oh my God, Anthony Edwards is hurt. Our pricing, we have no clue. So a lot of these guys look better on DK than they do on FanDuel. But anything else you want to talk about when it comes to the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point on Kyle Anderson. I don't think I mentioned him, but definitely interested. And obviously, if Rudy Gobert is out, then we're going to love Naz Reid. If he's in, if they're both out, then maybe we do go to Luka Garza. But that's, I think, unlikely. So we can cover that if we get that news. We should get news on every game except for that last game by the end of our show. So we can cross that bridge if we get there.
And we just got word as
Jaylen
well
Noel.
that Jaylen Noel, by the way, this is actually going to change a lot. This came out of nowhere. So we were about to move on from the Minnesota Timberwolves, but Neil's got to be loving this. This is going to be like a full hour-long talk about his team here. But Jaylen Noel was listed as doubtful. Now he is on track to play. This changes everything for the Minnesota Timberwolves in terms of some of those value pieces we talked about, because this is somebody with a realistic chance to go out and play extended minutes. And we also just got word that Şengün has been ruled out. So hopefully we get the Jalen Green news soon. But now that Noel is back in the mix, is this somebody we're going to want to play? And what is the trickle-down effect on the other players that we're potentially talking about playing from the Timberwolves?
It's hard because Noel's been out since February 24th. So hasn't played in nearly a month. I don't imagine that Jaylen Noel is coming back in and playing like 25 minutes here. Most likely he's still going to be somewhat limited. Hopefully more information comes, but I think it makes it, I don't think it makes him all that interesting. I think it makes it hard to play any of Jaylen Noel or Jordan McLaughlin, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I don't know. It's so much harder to read that situation because we don't have any sample size for Noel being in and Ant being out. But I imagine he just cuts into the minutes of the other Minnesota backup guards and makes them all a little bit dicer. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say they're unplayable because it's pretty likely that one of these guys gets up to 20, 22 minutes, maybe, in which case, they're good enough that they could put up a game that you need or want to have. But I don't know that I'm going to be playing any of these backup Minnesota guards at that point. I'll still play Taurean Prince, I think, but probably not McLaughlin, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, or Noel.
Yeah, it's minutes that's going to get shaved off of everybody. The ones that are going to be impacted the most, though, it's going to be hard for me to get to Nickeil Alexander-Walker, where I was going to be playing in large field tournaments. I think this makes him very tricky to roster now because I think Noel is the first guard off the bench. But I agree with you also. I don't think Noel immediately comes out and plays big minutes. And something that I like to talk about a lot when it comes to some of these players coming back from injuries is this was a knee injury. This wasn't a wrist. It wasn't a finger. It wasn't a hand. So it stands to reason his cardio isn't really up to par right now. And then also, who knows how many minutes his knee could potentially handle right now. So I'm not going to want to play Noel unless we get some crazy news that he's starting or anything like that. But he is going to cut into Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jordan McLaughlin. Nobody else too significantly. It's, a couple minutes that could get shaved off of somebody here and there, a little bit of usage. But the other guys we talked about, I still think hold true as being viable options. And but this is just going to be quite the show full of news here, Neil, because we just got Jalen Green on track to play. We got news before that Şengün is out. Kyrie Irving is available to play. Tim Hardaway Jr. is available to play. And then we found out that Jalen Green after that is a game time decision. When I hear that somebody's on track to play, but it is a game time decision, here's what this means to me, because I know the terminology gets to be really confusing. And this is going to be a generality. It's not going to be true 100% of the time, but it's going to be true more often than not. If somebody is on track to play and being called a game time decision, I consider them basically probable. And it means that the player is going to warm up. He's going to make sure everything's on the up and up. And as long as there are no setbacks in warmups, I assume that means Jalen Green is playing. So that's going to be my assumption that I'm building lineups in right now, is that Jalen Green is going to be active. But where do you want to dive into now, Neil? Do we talk about the Houston Rockets with Şengün out, or do you want to talk about the Dallas Mavericks with Kyrie Irving being in? Because there's a lot of moving pieces at once.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about the Rockets a little bit, because I think the Rockets are one of the more interesting teams on the entire slate, and that just makes them more interesting with Şengün out. I imagine Tari Eason is going to look really good for us. He's still 4,400, going to pick up some extra minutes, could even get the start at power forward. So I think Tari Eason pretty obviously interesting, but I already really liked Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green. Now I'm obviously assuming Jalen Green is in, but I'm just going to like all of these guys a little bit more with Alperen Şengün out. So Kevin Porter Jr., even at 8,000 price tag against Golden State, I think he has pretty big upside here. Jalen Green, similar. He's only 6,800. Love the upside there, assuming he's in. Jabari Smith now probably starting at center. Gets just a boost in terms of fantasy points per minute. Kind of interesting there. And then Tari Eason, I also think, could get the start, see significant minutes. And he's only 4,400, solid fantasy producer. So I really like Tari Eason as well. Do you see it any differently than I do there?
So I'm looking at the team right now, trying to get a sense of which players benefit from Şengün being out, because, you know, when you're looking at numbers earlier in the day, it's hard to figure out all the different iterations of this team with different players being listed as questionable. It's not as simple as being like one guy was questionable. There was multiple players. So I'm looking at the numbers right now. I'm actually going to take, because I didn't take Eric Gordon off. I'm going to take him off right now, because in the initial run I did with Şengün being off the court, it ended up with Eric Gordon being the player that benefits the most on the team, but he's not on the team. So I am going to take him off now and see what these numbers look like with no Eric Gordon now on the Clippers and no Şengün on the court. What does all the usage look like? All right. So we've got Kevin Porter Jr. seeing a little bit of a boost. Fairly neutral here on Jalen Green. He sees a little bit of an uptick in usage, but some of his efficiency goes. I didn't even know it's possible for Jalen Green's efficiency to go down, but apparently it does without Şengün on the court this year. Other players that are benefiting here, a lot of backup guys. Jabari Smith has been better with Şengün off the court. But yeah, there's not one player I look at and it's all of a sudden like, oh, this guy really pops out.
Right. But on this, I mean, against Golden State, I feel like no one player becomes an obvious, like it's a huge usage boost, but then, you know, extra minutes for some guys, a little bit more usage for other guys. And then it's just a great matchup with Golden State. So I think it's a really interesting team. There is obviously risk after several of these guys played huge minutes last night. So, you know, we just saw 40 minutes from Jalen Green last night, and KPJ and a lot of these guys played big minutes. So there is obviously risk, but I think if it's close, I think they say big minutes again. Like these guys are all young. I think they can play 40 minutes. So I imagine if it's close enough, they're still going to play their starters big minutes. Hard to know for sure, but I think there's risk involved. It's highly volatile, but man, in this pace up spot, if they can keep it close with the Warriors, we're going to get some nice fantasy plays here.
Yeah, we just got a bunch of super chats that have come in. So we're going to start answering some of these, starting with the question from Jay. Jay wants to know, Greg, where do I find Prize Picks only content on this site? I live in a non-betting site. What you want to be signing up for is our Pick'em projection. So Pick'em, which is going to cover Prize Picks, it's going to cover No House Advantage, and it is also going to cover Underdog. You get access to all of that when you sign up using the link we have below. I think we have a link below for it. It is going to get you all of those projections for less than $5 the first time you sign up for it. So that's the best package for you, particularly, Jay, is for Prize Picks, NHA, and for Underdog. It's called our Pick'em package. And if you're on, I'm not sure if you're on Twitter, but if you reach out to me and I could help you find the package that's best for you. That's what it's called. It's called the Pick'em package. But we also have, do we have the link below for that, Jordan? Okay. Yeah. So because Jordan Klein is one of the top 50 or so producers in the DFS industry, he's going to send that link into the YouTube chat. He's got the hookup for you, Jay. Mr. Cool Cam 90. Yeah, sorry, Neil.
I was just saying from the bathroom too. That's skill.
Yeah,
right
yeah. Jordan is still in the bathroom. He's got his phone on him. So we're actually sitting there because Jordan thought it was going to be a number one, but ended up being a number two. So he's producing from the toilet right now. It's a nice setup though.
Beautiful bathroom.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to spread his legs quite that wide.
Yeah,
but it's appreciated. And also, Jay, Jordan's going to help you out there. Mr. Cool Cam 97, top 5 favorite plays for a FanDuel single entry. So I could look at the FanDuel lineups that I've built, and I can tell you the players I got the most exposure to are THT, Kelly Oubre, Desmond Bane, Gordon Hayward, and Tari Eason. So those 5 are what I would consider the 5 best overall plays as of now on FanDuel. Things could certainly change as we get more injury news. And just to read off the players who are still questionable on the injury report, we have Jaren Jackson Jr., questionable. Rudy Gobert, questionable. That one's kind of fake, though. Kevin Huerter's questionable. Kevon Looney is questionable. Naz Reid questionable. Another one that I think is fake. And then we've got Trey Lyles questionable. And then we've got some of the other recent news we have not yet talked about. And The one that I think is going to be next up on the list for us to hit on is going to be Kyrie Irving. Although first I'm going to answer one more super chat, Neil, and then get ready for some Kyrie Irving talk now that Kyrie has been ruled in. Hannah Banana, DK tiers, please. I took second last night in the I think the $120 max. I think you mean it the other way around. I think you
20
mean
max $1.
Yeah, the 20 max $1. I think that's what I mean, not the $20 one max. But Hannah, I've got help for you right here. Here are the tiers plays that I got the most exposure to in each tier. Tier 1, Joel Embiid. And, tier 1 is pretty easily Joel Embiid. I wonder what his ownership is going to end up being. But the options are Embiid, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden. I know that Embiid's going to end up being popular, but his projection is so much higher than those other options. I think you just kind of have to go with Joel Embiid. Tier 2 for me, Domantas Sabonis. Tier 3 is right now Jaren Jackson Jr., but keep in mind that he's questionable. If he gets ruled out, my next favorite option is Kevin Porter Jr. Tier 4 is De'Aaron Fox. Tier 5 for me, Miles Turner. And then tier 6, Talen Horton Tucker. This tier also had Şengün in it. He's obviously not an option anymore. So THT in tier 6. Hannah, I hope that helps you out with your lineups. Now let's see what else we have here. This one from our guy, Robert Cremutula. He's got an update for us.
Ooh.
Finished 20th in the
right,
FanDuel final. Respectable. Love to hear it.
That's a tough field. Yeah.
Good showing. Good showing, Robert, finishing 20th. I appreciate all your help, guys. Subbed in Taurean Prince for Terrence Davis when starting lineups were announced. Would have won it all if I didn't. Who are our 5 favorite for FanDuel cash? Nothing worse than the news that makes you pivot off of the nuts.
Yep. I've been there and it sucks. What was that question?
The other question is, who are my 5 favorite for FanDuel cash? And I'll pull up some of our ownership projections. And if you wouldn't mind, Jordan, could you put the ownership projections on the screen? I'm going to look at some of the most popular players for FanDuel. And then from there, I'll see who I think that Robert should be building his cash game lineup around. And THT is projected for a mass amount of ownership right now, 56.4%. I think you want to play him in cash for sure. Same goes for Taurean Prince at 41% ownership. Then you get a bunch of guys that are really popular and are also kind of grouped together in terms of ownership on FanDuel. Here are some of my favorites. So we want to go with, for sure, THT and Taurean Prince. I'm going to also say Tyus Jones, Chris Bain. I just combined 2 guys. Tyus Jones, Chris Dunn, and then Desmond Bain. Those are the 5 that I would go with over for FanDuel. And THT, Taurean Prince are the 2 I would consider absolute must-haves on FanDuel, project for north of 40% ownership. While we're on the ownership topic, let's look at DraftKings, the most popular players. THT is projected for 41% ownership on DK. Taurean Prince is up to 35%. Chris Dunn is at 30%. Desmond Bain, 27%. And then Kelly Oubre also at 27%. And then we get to the next group of guys like Simone Fontecchio. He's at 26%. But, Neil, just looking at the most popular players we have tonight on DraftKings, at least in our projections, do you disagree with any of these players? And in terms of, do any of them look way over-owned to you?
Okay, hang on one second.
Yeah, refresh
make sure I have the ownership correct here.
Yeah, so it is, just to read off some of the top guys. Once again, THT at 41%, Taurean Prince 35%, Chris Dunn 30%, Desmond Bain 27%, and Oubre also 27%.
I mean, it looks like all of our highest owned players right now have negative leverage, both in terms of optimal odds and boom percentage. So like THT coming in, we have him projected for 41% ownership, as you said, 30% chance of booming, 32% chance of being optimal. So like, do I disagree that he should be highly owned? No. I mean, we've got him optimal 32% of the time, but 41% is more than I would like to have of THT. If I have enough time to really manicure my lineups to my liking, I'll probably be underweight to the field on 41% THT. He's been in so many great spots and failed in the past month or two. We've seen it time and time again, which doesn't mean he's going to fail, but it shows that possibility is there. And 41% is probably too high relative to the likelihood that he fails. Taurean Prince now coming in, we've got him at 35% ownership. See, the field we're anticipating is going to react quickly here. We have him optimal 24% of the time. Looks a little bit overrun. I mean, we Taurean Prince definitely not a guy that you can count on to put up a big fantasy score, even if he does play 30 minutes. And Jalen Noel might cut into Taurean Prince's minutes. Of course, as you said, he did lose minutes in the last game to a blowout. I think he could have played more than the 30 minutes that he did play in that one. So I think there's some volatility in the minutes, but The field playing 35%. I think relative to that, I probably would prefer to be underweight to the field. It's tough because you do need to find like good values, guys who you can count on. And I think Prince is, relatively, he's a fine play at 35%. I'll probably be underweight to the field, but I don't think that he's like a terrible play.
And
Christoph,
we
go
got
ahead.
some of the more Timberwolves updates. So now it's
Oh.
official, as Neil and I suspected. Naz Reid playing. Anthony Edwards officially out now, and also Rudy Gobert playing. Austin Rivers also playing. So the Fugazi injury reports for the Timberwolves, they need to be investigated. They need to be fined. They need to be thrown in prison for this nonsense. These players are all going to play, and they're going to be listed as questionable for the next game as well. I'm going to go out and say right now, my bold prediction for whatever slate the Timberwolves next play on, I think it's Wednesday. I don't know what the results of the slate are going to be, but Rudy Gobert is going to be listed as questionable for it.
I feel confident in that as well.
So just something to keep an eye on. And by the way, Kevon Looney has been upgraded to probable for tonight. Something else. He was somebody who's listed as questionable. So a lot of the pieces starting to come into focus for us, at least as far as the injury report goes. We brought up something there, Neil, that I want to circle back on, because you had said that there's a bunch of these guys that are really popular and they're slightly over-owned in the boom bust tool. Is there anybody that's cheap and is a little bit lower owned that's positively leveraged, that if somebody's playing a really chalky lineup, they might be able to look at one of those players and say like, all right, here's my pivot off of a really chalky, say Taurean Prince or somebody else who's picking up a lot of ownership?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you consider cheap, but if you can consider 5,000 cheap, Dylan Brooks has looked like one of our best leverage plays all day today. He only coming in around 7% ownership. He's obviously a pretty volatile player, but if he can get hot, he can put up a big score here. We've got him booming 13% of the time at 5,000 and optimal 13% of the time relative to 7% ownership. That looks great. And of course, if Jaren Jackson Jr. is ruled out, he is going to get more popular and he's also going to have a higher likelihood of hitting his number. So that'll affect things. But even if Jaren Jackson Jr. is in at 5,000, Dylan Brooks looks like a nice leverage play. Obviously, a lot of volatility there regarding whether his shot is falling. Kai Jones, also backup center for Charlotte. If Nick Richards gets in foul trouble, I think they talked about this a bit on the last show. Like, he's probably not expected to play a ton of minutes. It's tough. Like, the center rotation in Charlotte is not something we can really count on. Josh was saying this morning, I think he's right, that they would like to play Nick Richards like more closer to 30 minutes if he does stay out of foul trouble. Who knows if that is their plan, but I think that's kind of my inclination also, that he's losing a lot of playing time to foul trouble. But he gets in foul trouble, and Kai Jones is only 3,400, and he's been in the rotation. Like, even if he only plays 15 minutes, I think he looks fine from a DFS perspective, and I think he has upside for more minutes. So we have Kai Jones at only 2% ownership, 7% chance of being optimal, 5% chance of booming. He looks like a pretty good low salary play. Do you have anybody else who stands out to you?
Yeah, and let me read, because this might change. Let me see. Did we have Şengün in that last ownership run? Yes, we still did. I was going to say Tari Eason, but I think he's going to be really popular once we rerun, because I just reran my lineups after updating for Houston, and Tari Eason's my most rostered player.
Yeah.
But I just assume he's going to be more popular. So it would help if we had another run of ownership, or when we have another run of ownership, to really make some concrete opinions.
Yeah.
But at least as of now, if Eason does not end up being popular, it's him for sure for me.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. If he's not popular, I'm going to love Easton at 44. I mean, I'm going to like him regardless, but if he's low owned, we're going to love him.
And I assume if he is popular, that probably cuts into the ownership of, say, a Taurean Prince and could make him more modestly owned. But we'll see when some of those ownership projections come out. And we have a question in our Discord channel. If you guys are in Discord, at me, we can answer some of these questions on the show. It's one of the perks of being a Stokastic Plus Platinum member, and you guys could get access by clicking on the link below. It's going to get you 50% off any package over on the site. Our player projections, our ownership projections, all included in a Platinum package, as well as tools for basically every single DFS sport out there. And if you're somebody who's newer to DFS, maybe you want lineups even built for you, we have our lineup generator package. It'll build up to 20 lineups for you. You could upload them directly to DraftKings, directly to FanDuel, and you can get access to that for less than $5 using the promo code below. So that's probably one of the best deals we have to take advantage of on the entire site as far as DFS goes. But the question we have here is from Jumpo. Who is a high-owned player you'd feel comfortable fading in a DK small field tournament? Interesting. I like this.
Yeah. High-owned player I'd feel comfortable fading.
Let's see. So for myself, who is the highest owned player that is not in my highest projected lineup? I think that's a good way to figure this out. So for me, all right, so THT is in my highest projected lineup. For what it's worth, Torian Prince is currently not in my highest projected lineup, so I would say him.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Agbaji, we're projecting Agbaji for 24% ownership. I feel like I would feel relatively comfortable fading Agbaji here. I don't know. I don't feel like super comfortable with any of these high owned plays, but I think that he's probably the player that I feel the most comfortable fading just because he's such a bad fantasy point per minute player. 0.59 fantasy points per minute this season. We don't necessarily know that those minutes are safe, so I think I would say Agbaji.
I'm going to change to Agbaji. Actually, I'm pivoting. I'm going with Agbaji with you because I think I'm more apt to play Torian Prince in a single entry than Agbaji. I like your answer better. I'm stealing from you. I'm cheating from the smart kid on the test.
Nice. I like that. Hopefully he does not do us wrong. He played 36 minutes last time out and put up 24 fantasy points, which like that's fine if he puts up 24 at 38. And I don't think those 36 minutes are guaranteed. So
yeah, he's been fairly terrible as a fantasy producer for a lot of the season. Like we've seen other times where he's played extended minutes. He generally has not really wowed in those kind of scenarios. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm gonna back you. I'm gonna go with Agbaji as well. The next question we have in here is from Opposite Exo. He wants to know who are the top 5 DK tournament plays. So I'm gonna say one of them is definitely Tari Eason for me. Tari Eason's towards the top of my. I love Tari Eason. I assume he's going to start today, even if the game is a blowout against the Warriors. Decent chance that ends up happening. Eason plays in garbage time, and not always, but sometimes plays in garbage time. That would be an avenue for him. So I'm going to give him as one of my favorite tournament plays. Let's go back and forth here, Neil. So there's one of them for me. Who's somebody else who'd add to the list? And we'll work our way up to 5. Do like a top 5.
All right, this
like
is tough.
Countdown.
So I never know how to answer this question because like the chalky guys are also great.
Yeah.
Tournament plays, like just I mean like he's overowned, but like still a great tournament play. I feel like is often my answer. Embiid looks great. Coming in, I mean, he's the most expensive player on the slate. He has the highest projection on the slate by 7 fantasy points. That's a lot of fantasy points. I think we actually, at least earlier in the day, we had some positive leverage on Embiid as well. Let me double check that as well. Okay, so now we actually have slight negative leverage here, but it still looks fine to me. 15% ownership, 22% chance of booming. So positive leverage there, but then 13% chance of being optimal. I like it for a 15% owned player who is the highest projection on the slate by 7 fantasy points. That looks good to me.
All right. So I just did another run of lineups just to get a little bit clearer of a picture of who else it would be for me. De'Aaron Fox is another one. I'm actually not spent as much value as there is on this slate. I'm not spending up a ton for anybody. Like Embiid is my most rostered spend up option right now, and he's in 20% of the lineups in my most recent run. So I don't look at any of these pay up options, be like, even though there's all this value, more of my pay ups end up falling in like the lower end of the higher price guys. So De'Aaron Fox to me, I know he hasn't been playing his best basketball over the last few games, but this has made his price point way too low. So $8,200 De'Aaron Fox, I get to him a whole bunch. And the other thing too is with the amount of value that's opened up, like he's pretty modestly owned. 17% for De'Aaron Fox on DraftKings and on FanDuel. Here's how different the price points are for him. So on FanDuel, Fox is $9,500. He's okay at $9,500, but I'm not going to be prioritizing at that price. $8,200 for DraftKings. He is my favorite star type player to get to on the slate. So I'm going to add De'Aaron Fox, and he's showing up in about half my lineups.
Yeah, I like that call quite a bit on De'Aaron Fox. All right, we're getting some lineups here. I'm seeing we got the Hornets and the Pacers lineups. I'm trying to see if there's anything that's going to affect what I'm saying here because it's a tough question. So I'm just covering all bases here. I mean, I like a lot of players from that game. Also, this Charlotte Indiana game, some of the best value plays on the slate come from that game. I kind of like Kelly Oubre just as another great fantasy point per dollar guy. He's getting 28% ownership. So not exactly, a guy who's going overlooked by the field, but I think it's warranted. He's 6,900, great matchup with the Pacers. I think Kelly Oubre, I mean, it's hard because there's so many of these Charlotte guys that I'm interested in playing, but Kelly Oubre just looks like the best fantasy point per minute guy. And, 28% ownership, not too crazy.
Yeah. And then one final one that I'm going to add, this will round up our top 5. Where is the ownership on? So Mike Conley is 14% owned over on FanDuel. On DraftKings, he's only 9% owned. Conley at $5,500 on DraftKings, $5,800 on FanDuel, fairly modestly owned with Anthony Edwards out. We've seen that the Timberwolves are much more willing to play Conley big minutes than the Jazz were. That goes for the Jazz this year and the Jazz in previous years with Mike Conley as well. So I think that Conley is way under-owned if we're looking for a contrarian piece to play in large field tournaments. I'm a little more than double the field on him right now. So Conley is going to be another one for myself. Is he somebody you imagine you'll be getting to?
Yeah, absolutely. With Ant out, you just have to imagine the usage is going to go up for Mike Conley. We've got him still at under 10% ownership. Yeah, I like that call quite a bit. It's only 5,500. That even came down a little bit. So I think Conley certainly very much in play.
By the way, shout out to Larry C, who just messaged in the chat and tagged me and said that ownership got updated 1 minute ago. So that's helpful information. Let's see what has changed. So Tari Eason, unfortunately, not unpopular at all. He is the most popular player on the slate by a country mile, which makes sense relative to the lineups that I was running before. Tari Eason now projected for 58% ownership. That's a good amount. 58% going to Tari Eason on DraftKings, 69% nice on FanDuel. That is a lot of people playing Tari Eason. Our new most rostered players on DraftKings, and then I'll read them off for FanDuel as well. Tari Eason, just mentioned him, 58%. This is DraftKings. THT, 38%. Jalen Green, 31%. Chris Dunn, 28%. Kelly Oubre, 26%. Then over for FanDuel, Eason, 69%. THT, 54%. PJ Washington, 38%. Tyus Jones, 35%. And then Kelly Olynyk, 34%. An update before. Guys, go out and play Tari Eason in cash games. I know we got some questions about it before. And Tari Eason, make sure you have him in your cash game lineups today. Let's see, anything else as far as super chats? Yeah, we've got a few of them here. So let's roll through these, starting with Sean Kaiser. Last man in on FanDuel, Agbaji or Nickeil Alexander-Walker. If it has to be one or the other, Agbaji. Yeah. But my answer, considering the value that's opened up and how the slate looks now, I don't really love either of them. Agbaji is my preferred choice of the two. Agbaji a little bit more popular than I'd like him to be, and he's a poor points per minute fantasy producer. But it's hard for me to go out and feel really confident in Nickeil Alexander-Walker because we just got news that Jalen Noel is playing, and he was listed as doubtful earlier. So Agbaji, if it has to be one of the two. Peak Poor 007, top 5 DK cash plays. So this is one right here with some updated information on ownership and projections. I think we could say these players pretty confidently. Tari Eason, must play in cash. THT, another player, must play in cash considering the current information. I'm going to be underweight to the field on Jalen Green in large field tournaments. I'm going to recommend him in cash games, though. And then as we start to go down, let's see, who are the other players that are popular? And then I also project really well. I would still say play Taurean Prince in cash, even though his ownership projection has dropped a little bit. I think he's a stronger cash play than tournament play. And I would still roll with Desmond Bane as well. I think Desmond Bane, another guy you want in your cash games there. So those are the 5 that I think you should have in there considering the current information. Peak Poor 007. Pierre. Is he a Frenchman? I'm going to say yes. Is McConnell a lock on FanDuel? Your top Pacers on FanDuel? Thanks. No, I would not consider TJ McConnell a lock today. Now, with that said, he's one of my more rostered point guards in the build I made on FanDuel, but he's not even my most rostered point guard. I got some more of Tyus Jones than him, and I got some more Chris Dunn. And the follow-up was, who are my top Pacers on FanDuel? All right, so if I sort by just the Pacers, who did I get the most exposure to? I got, in order, I got Benedict Mathurin 1, TJ McConnell 2, Miles Turner 3. Those are the players from the Pacers I got the most exposure to over on FanDuel. So I don't know if Pierre is a Pacers fan. I don't know if he's going to the game tonight, but he wants to know my favorite Pacers. That's the answer. Brian Brooks, top 3 lowest ownership, highest projection for DK. All right. So who are this is also one that's kind of hard to know exactly who we would pinpoint, but if we had to go with 3 contrarian players for DraftKings tournament purposes, and they have to be so lowest ownership, highest projection. Well, I guess by then it would just be expensive guys.
I mean, I was going to say, wait, lowest ownership, highest projection. Okay. I was thinking just like straight up the leverage column on the boom bust tool. Like, but I guess that's different. Highest projection is different than optimal odds.
Yeah. So I would say let's answer both because I don't know exactly what it means. We'll answer both.
Okay.
Do you want to do the leverage? And I'll do the ones that I would say I feel best about spending up for it, lower ownership that are modestly owned.
Yeah, sure. That works.
Okay. So which are the 3 players? I'm pretty sure he asked this for 3. Yes, he asked for 3. Who are the 3 top leverage players that you think look reasonable in the boom bust tool?
Oh, you're asking me now. Sorry, I thought you were doing your search. I'm ready. All right. TJ McConnell is the number 1 leverage play on the slate, coming in at 9% projected ownership, 18% chance of booming, 16% chance of being optimal. He looks very good at 6,100. The matchup is as good as it gets. Should be getting big minutes. We didn't. I assume he's not starting. I don't remember. Yeah, he's still not starting, but he still should get big minutes, I would expect. So TJ McConnell is our top leverage play currently. De'Aaron Fox, I know you loved him for big, large field tournaments. I love him too. He's only 8,200 in a great matchup with Utah, only coming in with 19% ownership. That kind of surprises me. 25% chance of booming, 24% chance of being optimal. He looks great. And then, yeah, we've knocked Dillon Brooks down to number 3. He's actually tied with, so I already mentioned Dillon Brooks, but Miles Turner also same leverage as Dillon Brooks here. 14% projected ownership, 21% chance of booming, 18% chance of being optimal. So a lot of these Indiana Charlotte players look good.
And then something else that I'm going to say about this is that I think that we could use Fox for both of these. If we're going for players who have the lowest ownership for the highest projection, I think that Fox fits that bill as well. Here's what's tricky about this, though, is if you look at our highest projected players, basically all of them are projected for between 10 and 15% ownership.
Right.
Like it's not like there's some pay up option we have today that is projected for 5% ownership. Like it just doesn't exist on this slate.
I mean, yeah. Oh, no, never mind. I was going to say Steph Curry, and then I was like, no, that was what I got. That's not actually his ownership. Yeah, and I had this struggle when I was writing my article because I do like who do our tools like in the high end range, and I saw Embiid, and I was like, who else? Like who has positive leverage? And it was like literally nobody above like 8,200 had positive leverage. So it's kind of tough.
Yeah, for me, Fox is going to be one. I think Kyrie Irving, another guy with a lot of opportunity. There's no Luka Doncic. We still don't know exactly long-term what Kyrie is going to look like in Dallas with Luka off the court, because right after Luka got hurt, we saw Kyrie get hurt, but it stands to reason, giving logic, that there's a lot of upside in Kyrie. So I'll say Fox, I'll say Kyrie. I guess I'll add Embiid into the mix because he's only projected for 15% ownership, but I guess it depends if we're considering that low owned or not, but we do have 10% ownership on Kyrie. And like I said, I think Fox is one of the more under owned players on the slate. So Fox and Kyrie and Embiid, if it really, if we need a third one in there. James Magruder, best 5,000 or under utility player. It cannot be Brooks or Dunn. All right. Can't be Brooks or Dunn. 5,000 or less. Who is that for me? It is Tari Eason. It's Tari Eason by a pretty wide margin for myself.
Yeah, I'm wait, you said it, can it be Dennis Smith?
It can be Dennis Smith Jr.
So Dennis Smith Jr. is 5,000. We have him with a higher projection than Tari Eason. So he is the highest projected player in these Stokastic projections, 5,000 or under.
Yeah, Tari Eason for me, I think he starts, and I have him projected for over 30 fantasy points. So that is going to be my guy. I
just realized that I had it on the point guard tab, so that's probably not correct. Because I was expecting it to be Tari Eason.
Yeah, let's say I have a feeling it's going to be Tari Eason as well.
Benedict Mathurin, projected for 30 fantasy points at 4,900.
Yeah, we did just get the Pacers starting lineup, and it is Mathurin starting with Noura heading back to the bench.
And actually, I just want to amend. I think that Mathurin is now one of the best tournament plays on the slate. Just want to add that. Projects really well for us. might not get the ownership that he would have gotten if we had the news that he was in earlier in the day.
And also the other thing too is this starting lineup came out, relatively like 6:40 Eastern time, so 20 minutes before the slate starts. I could get behind that for sure. How much Mathurin do you think you're going to play? Is he going to be like one of your most rostered players on the slate?
Probably. I would guess that I have over 50% Benedict Mathurin.
Okay.
How about you?
I don't know that much. He's going to be in my player pool for sure, though. I should probably try to figure out who I'm playing now before the slate starts. Seems like time to do that.
Yeah, I'm realizing that too. Yeah, I mean, so the thing with Mathurin is just I look at our projection for him. 30 fantasy points at 4,900. Like, okay, so he projects really well. The reason to not play him would be ownership, but we're only projecting him for 11% ownership currently. So a lot hard for me to want to cut back on his projection when he's getting such little ownership.
No, makes sense. I am going to have some exposure to him, not as much as you in like half lineups or anything, but he's going to be somebody, if he was coming off the bench, I wouldn't have had him in all likelihood. And now he's somebody who will actually be in my player pool. Let's bang out some more of these super chats. Avi Schreier, I'm prioritizing Fox on FanDuel because I think he's going to go off. He has the best individual matchup, in my opinion, and he won't be owned because of the price difference. Is that kosher thinking? Yeah, I like De'Aaron Fox today. Obviously, he's more favorable on DraftKings just because he is $1,300 less expensive. But we've only got Fox projected for 5% ownership, and that is a number that I came in overweight to the field to in the build I had. So, Avi, I agree with you. I think Fox for large field tournaments, even on FanDuel at elevated price point, is worthwhile. Greatness 410. Is Embiid and Drummond a good pairing? Embiid getting Vooch in foul trouble, or Embiid dominates and it's a blowout, or is this too galaxy brained? Yeah, you're thinking too hard. There isn't any real correlation between Embiid and Drummond. Is he somebody you're playing at all, by the way, Drummond? Because that's a no for me.
I don't think so. Yeah, he's somebody who projects pretty well, point per dollar. We have him at, hang on, maybe projected better earlier in the day, and then we realized he's not going to play. No, where is he? Never mind. He's not projecting all that well. 4.6x. So he's projected for just under 14 fantasy points. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, you could get there. It's sort of if you want to play the narrative, but he typically ducks Embiid rather than like sparring with him, and he's going to be coming off the bench. So I don't think I'm getting to Drummond.
And I should also mention that even though the slate locks in 6 minutes, Neil and I are not going to be going anywhere. We're going to be sticking around. We're going to be looking out for news. And we're also going to be breaking down some of our favorite plays over on an NHA based on the tools we have over at Stokastic.com. So if you guys haven't signed up at NHA yet, use the link we have below. It is going to get you up to $100 bonus on your first deposit. And at No House Advantage, even if you guys live in a state that doesn't have legal sports betting, you can probably play player props over at No House Advantage. And we have all the tools to help you win some money on NHA over at Stokastic.com. All right, I'm uploading my lineups right now, Neil. How are you doing on your lineups?
Yeah, they're a work in progress. I've got some lineups in, so maybe not my final lineups, but I've got workable lineups in.
Yeah, that's what I just did as well. Got all the news in there that I care about, and yeah, all right, I feel pretty good about it. By the way, did you limit yourself to 3 or 4 max today?
3 max today.
3, okay. When I was running some lineups before without any kind of rules on, I was getting to all kinds of Utah Jazz players. All kinds.
Yeah. And I don't think I want that many Utah Jazz players in one lineup.
So the one thing that I have it at 4 for now. I might change to 3 after lock. I just like the flexibility because I get to so many of them. It gives me flexibility, and I know there's going to be more news. And like, I don't know exactly who the Rockets are going to start. I like kind of some of the flexibility it gives me, and then I can make some late swaps later.
Yep, that makes sense.
All right, let's see some more super chats to get to. Joseph Corona, top 5 FanDuel cash options. Yeah, so we'll get back to that and we'll see what has changed, if anything, as far as the ownership goes in the last few minutes. I'm going to echo a lot of the thoughts I said before. Like Tari Eason, absolutely must play him in cash games. We had said that THT, another guy who I thought really strong cash game option. And we do have, now that he's starting, Mathurin's not projecting for a ton of ownership, by the way, Neil. We just got a fresh ownership update. Mathurin is now 26% on DraftKings and 37% on FanDuel. Okay. So I'm going to add him to the must play in cash games list. I'm going to go Eason, THT, Mathurin, and then I'll say Desmond Bain, and Tyus Jones on FanDuel. Those are going to be my 5 must plays for FanDuel, considering the most updated information we have now. Another super chat here. This is from Johnny Nacho. Best 3,700 play on FanDuel, Loughran or Toscano Anderson. I don't think I got to either of those guys. Let's see if I go all my lineups. Also, do you have a position or just 3,700 in general? I know I'm talking to somebody who can't answer, but I'm just kind of thinking out loud.
Is this for DraftKings?
He said for FanDuel.
Oh.
So let's see. If it's Loughran and Toscano Anderson, I assume that means it has to be a power forward. Because Toscano Anderson, yeah, they're both 3,700 at power forward. So I'm going to assume you mean power forward. He didn't specify, but I'm going to go out on a limb. The answer is going to be none of them. All these guys suck. Might be the right answer, though. But we're also only a couple minutes to go until lock. I don't want to tell the guy to go rebuild the entire thing with 2 minutes to go. And then plus we got the slight delay. So the one that projects the best is Juan Toscano Anderson, and I got 0 exposure to him in the lineups I ran. We haven't projected for less than 10 fantasy points, and he's our best projected player for that price point. It's a tough spot there, Johnny. The answer is Juan Toscano Anderson, but the actual answer is nobody.
That's that power forward. Yeah, I guess it has to be
The answer, they're all terrible.
Right.
It has to be power forward 3,700 or under. You know, it's not like we could, I mean, if you got the VIP, you could text him, you could ask him to lower the price of one of the players for you. And, you know, they'll do that in one of your lineups. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, Johnny, if it has to be one, Toscano Anderson, but I think you might want to rebuild a little bit there. Noobs on Ice 247. Do we like Kobe White? I'm not playing Kobe White today. Are you?
I don't believe so. I'm playing a little bit of Patrick Williams, but I don't think I'm playing any Kobe White.
Yeah, Patrick Williams is going to be starting in the absence of Alex Caruso. He's whatever, Patrick Williams. If he had some exposure to him, cool. He's not somebody that I think we should be prioritizing, but Kobe White, not somebody I got to. Mr. Sledge to you, Matherin or Monk for DK single entry. I prefer Matherin, especially now that he's starting. The Black Mamba. Thoughts on Tillman? I don't think I have Tillman exposure. So here are my thoughts on Tillman. I don't have exposure to him right now. If Jaren Jackson Jr. gets ruled out, I will like Xavier Tillman.
Yeah, I already have 20% Xavier Tillman. I just think he's got pretty big upside, not expected to get a ton of ownership. But yeah, if he's going to look a lot better if Jaren Jackson Jr. is out. Even with him in, I think that he's playable, though, for sure.
Next question we have here. It is Sam Cassell. Dance wants a contrarian play for 7,000 or less for his utility spot on DraftKings. Let's see. Walker Kessler isn't that popular anymore. Walker Kessler is projected for... Yeah, we're down to 10% ownership on Walker Kessler. That's the answer for me.
Yeah, it's pretty low. I'm looking for somebody who's low owned, 7,000 or under.
It's Walker Kessler.
Walker Kessler. I mean, Tyus Jones coming in at 11% ownership. I don't know if he's right there. They're coming in at the same ownership with basically, oh no, Kessler does project a little bit better than Tyus Jones. So yeah, it's Walker Kessler number 1.
Pat Clay, Tom Star, Clay or Slow-Mo on FanDuel single entry. That is Kyle Anderson for me. Hef Love. Is Jabari Smith overlooked with Şengün now? DK ownership seems low. To an extent, there's always going to be players that are projected for very low ownership that might rate out positively in the boom bust tool, but I still just won't get exposure to them, right? Like you'll find these guys who, for instance, a lot of times you're like, oh, this guy's 1% owned with a 2% chance to be in the optimal lineup. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm playing them. And there's so many good options on the slate now. Jabari Smith, somebody who I'm just not really getting to right now, but did you get to Jabari?
I don't have any right now. I still might. I actually had bumped his projection to try to get him into my player pool. Even after bumping up to 34 fantasy points from like 30, I still didn't get to any. I think that he's interesting against Golden State. It is a fast-paced matchup, but he did play huge minutes last night. It's a little bit worrisome, but I don't know. He's been playing fairly big minutes every game except for one in the past like 6 or 7. He's played 36 or more. So that kind of minutes with Şengün out, I have some interest in Jabari Smith. I think he's probably going a little bit overlooked.
And we got the official starting lineup for the Timberwolves. It is Conley, Prince, McDaniels, Anderson, Gobert. So not unexpected there, but I'm happy we didn't get any wrench thrown into it. It's like Jalen Noel starting or anything like that. So Timberwolves starting lineup, all well and good. Is this changing anything for you though? Like where did you settle on with the Timberwolves considering the Noel news?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what I expected from the Timberwolves. Currently, I actually only have 3 Timberwolves currently in my player pool, and that is Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, and Torian Prince. I didn't play any of the backup cards. I was expecting Torian Prince to start, so this isn't like big news for us. He started the last game. I might try to get Jaden McDaniels into the player pool, but no, that doesn't change anything because I think that's the starting lineup we had expected the Timberwolves to play. So doesn't change anything, but I do just looking at it because I'm still kind of tinkering with my lineups. I do think I'll probably add Jaden McDaniels to the player pool too.
All right, that makes sense by me. And yeah, we are at lock. That was a very fast hour. I don't know if it felt that way for you, Neil.
Well, they also went really long on the last show, so that might be part of it.
It did help that Lofty gave us 5-minute reprieve because Lofty went about 5 minutes long. But either way, the 5 minutes didn't really make a big difference. It was more so the amount of news we got and the amount of stuff we had to react to and change on the fly. I'm curious to see how that ended up impacting some of the ownership. So I'm going to pull this up on DraftKings, download the CSV. I really want to see, in particular, where Mathurin ended up coming in ownership-wise.
Me too.
All right. Download this. So while I'm downloading this, Neil, what are your rooting interests tonight? Who are you starting with? Who do you need to do well? Who do you absolutely need to do well for this slate?
Tari Eason is my highest owned player on the slate, so I would say he's a priority for me. De'Aaron Fox going to be a priority for me. I have a ton of De'Aaron Fox. Currently, I have a lot of Talon Horton Tucker. I think I'm going to be cutting back on that a little bit. I did not realize it. I got down to 30% Benedict Mathurin, which is lower than I was hoping to get. I did end up, after we got the ownership projection, I cut back his projection a little bit, and I got less of him than I would have wanted to, but ended up with 30% Mathurin. Yeah, I mean, I guess Tari Eason, the pretty clear number one for me. How about you?
Yeah, it's got to be Tari Eason. He's in all of my lineups, so it would be an issue for me if he didn't do well. But he's also going to be fairly popular, so maybe if he ends up being like 70% owned, then maybe it might not make a massive difference. Other players that I'm rooting for, De'Aaron Fox, another one. I mentioned him a handful of times over the course of the show, and then I guess just hitting on some of the right Jazz value because I've got so many of these guys mixed in. Walker Kessler is actually another one I'm well overweight to. We ended up seeing that he was only 10% owned. I like Walker Kessler a lot. He's actually behind THT, the Jazz player I get the second most exposure to right now. So Walker Kessler is going to be another one I'm rooting for. But who are we fading? Who can we not have do well for this slate?
Well, let's look at the owner. I mean, I want to see the ownership of who has already started.
So of the players that have already started, pretty modest ownership. We don't really have any crazy chalk so far. Oubre, 25% owned. PJ Washington, 22%. I am underweight to PJ Washington. That's somebody I'm going to be rooting against, I believe.
I'm overweight to both of them.
Okay. I am underweight to PJ Washington. They're just other centers that I liked more than him. So PJ Washington, I keep pulling up the wrong tab on my computer.
Jaren Jackson available to play.
Ooh, all right. We'll talk about that in a second. Miles Turner's 21%. Terry Rozier, 19%. We had Embiid come in just 17%. Mathurin, only 16% ownership was the final number on him. So no real crazy chalk here.
Yeah, nothing that looks too high to me, really.
Yeah, so I guess I'm rooting against PJ Washington at his ownership. And like I said, guys I'm going to be rooting for, Walker Kessler, Tari Eason, De'Aaron Fox. Those are some guys that are going to be key for me tonight. And see if any of these games tipped off. I'm feeling it's a no, but just going to check. And what do we make of Jaren Jackson Jr. now that he is going to be in?
I think he becomes an interesting tournament play. I mean, he's in this matchup with Dallas. Pretty bad. They're pretty bad defensively. It is a home game for those who are tracking the Jaren Jackson stocks at home. Gets that little boost here. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't project extremely well for us, but I think I'm giving him a little boost to get more than the field. He's only projected for 5.9% ownership. Although I'm kidding, I do think that, you can consider the fact that he is playing at home, given we have seen this trend for a long time. I think maybe it even is worth considering. So given the home boost, the matchup with Dallas, I actually kind of like Jaren Jackson Jr. here.
I'm curious to look at what his splits are now. All right. Home road for Triple J. The other thing too is, I don't know if you saw this, a lot of beat reporters have looked into it. And if you just looked at the numbers, you would assume it's favorable stat keeping, but he's actually just been better at racking up defensive stats at home than on the road. I think it was Zach Lowe and Kirk Goldsberry. Each of them looked at every single registered block, steal, and shot for Jaren Jackson Jr. when the big Reddit conspiracy theory came out. And they didn't find anything suspicious about any of the stat keeping. They're just like, yeah, he's just blocked more shots at home and stolen more at home. But here are the splits. Triple J, 3.9 blocks per game at home, 2.2 on the road, 1.3 steals at home, and 0.8 on the road. So overall, by the way, still very gaudy numbers. Averages 3 stocks per game on the road, but 5.2 at home.
That's a big difference.
Do you want to know? I have an actual theory for this, by the way, like a reasonable one that would not really be conspiracy related. So one of the big reasons that home court advantage is very significant in all sports is because there's a human element where umpires, referees, judges, whoever it might be, there's a human element. They hear the crowd and they end up being more swayed to call fouls in favor of the home team than the road team. What is the biggest issue that we know about Jaren Jackson Jr. as a player? He fouls a shit ton. To me, it's pretty logical to think that there's a lot of shots that he blocks at home that are called blocks that might get called as fouls on the road. That's my working theory on this.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good theory. I also think, another non-conspiracy reason is he's just sleeping in his own bed, not traveling, maybe has a little bit more pep in his step. I don't know. I think that there's reason to believe players are a little bit more comfortable playing at home in general, and maybe it's a bigger impact for some than others.
His foul rate is also higher on the road than it is at home. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Especially when, and I think it all goes together, by the way, too. There's something to what you said. It's a confluence of things, right? It's not just one. It's not just one thing where it's like, the stat keeper is rigging the games. Oh, the refs are calling the games more in favor. It's kind of all these things coming together a little bit.
Right. Exactly. And there doesn't need to be some great explanation for it. If we can just see that this is a trend that has been going on for a long time, it might be something we need to consider.
And we've got a very, very important question to bring up here, because somebody asked if I was in the debate club in high school. Absolutely not. And then we've got Ryan did follow up as to how I ascertain. How did I come across this information? Well, Ryan Rinpack says that I am not at the club with John Moran on the road, and that's why. Incorrect. You might want to check the fingerprints on that gun and find out where he got it from.
You're the friend, huh?
I've been trying to pin this on Eric. It was me the whole time. It was always me.
That's why you got to pin it on Eric.
Firearm. It was me.
Nice.
I came clean. And real quick super chat here from Corey Bomber. And then we'll start looking at no house advantage and we'll dig into some of the prop bets over there. But Corey Bomber, Kessler and Bain, or Christian Wood and KPJ, Kevin Porter Jr. And do we worry about Kevin Porter Jr. on a back-to-back? I worry more about the Houston Rockets being the Houston Rockets and just getting their asses kicked by the Warriors and his minutes being limited that way. The back-to-back doesn't really worry me, but either way, I like Walker Kessler more than I like Christian Wood. I like Desmond Bain more than I like Kevin Porter Jr. So the back-to-back thing isn't really the reason why I'm going with the answer, but Kessler, Desmond Bain, that is going to be my answer. How about for yourself, Neil? Kessler and Bain, or Christian Wood and Kevin Porter Jr.?
I can't really get behind. I don't think I'm playing any Christian Wood. Christian Wood's scary. He's so volatile, but we have Tim Hardaway Jr. back. We have Kyrie back. I don't think I'm going to be getting to a ton of Christian Wood, so I'll go with the same side as you.
All right, there we go. And Clarence Johnson saying Tupac would still be alive if Greg was the shooter. Certainly would be if Russell Westbrook was the shooter. It would have taken out a couple people that were bystanders, but those are they were probably lower. They were probably overall lower value people than Tupac, though. Anyway,
that's for sure.
Are there any other super chats? And let me make sure that we didn't get any other questions in Discord to answer before we talk about NHA. We did not. All right, so we're going to break down some no house advantage right now. Let's pull up some of the projections that we have over at Stokastic.com to help you guys build out your lineups. We've got our pick and package. If you guys haven't signed up yet, if you're playing on Prize Picks, if you're playing on No House Advantage, if you're playing at Underdog, you want to check out our pick and package, because for less than $5, you get access to all of those projections using the link below. 50% off. And we've got all the tools you need to build out some winning player prop cards. Our data, super easy to use too, because it's just going to show you, here are the props. Here are our projections. These are projected odds for it to go over or under. It is that easy that, well, even like Jordan Klein could figure it out. Even the simplest of people, who is still, by the way, pooping during the show. This is real nasty work by Jordan Klein.
Guy's
this is
pro.
a full. We're an hour and 10 minutes into him sitting on the toilet and shitting.
And he's talking to us the whole time.
Yeah, yeah. He couldn't be happy.
Like, we're on a show, Jordan.
Brian, and you could mute yourself. I don't need to hear, the splash every single time. But Brian Brooks, Greg, your favorite snack that is always on TG list? What's T/G?
List.
The grocery list, maybe?
That is always on T. Your favorite
I like peanuts from Costco. Really anything from Costco. I have very few actual goals in life, like real tangible goals. If I am not sponsored by Costco at some point during my life, everything I've done is a total failure.
I didn't know
Costco
this about
peanuts. Costco peanuts. Do you
I don't spend a lot of time at Costco, to be honest.
Oh my! It's there's one right down the street from me. I do everything there. I get my clothes, not all my clothes. I get a lot of clothes from Costco.
Wow.
I get food from Costco, meat from Costco. They've got great red meat there. Make burgers with it, tacos, steaks. So basically anything sold at Costco, Brian Brooks. But for me, probably the peanuts number one. Yourself, Neil. If you had to pick one snack food that you're building your night around, what would you go with?
Ooh, one snack food I'm building. I mean, beef jerky. I eat beef jerky so much. Although I eat it less now because my dog is absolutely obsessed with it. Like my beef jerky, he loves it. So I've just started giving him most of the beef jerky. I'm also, trying to get a little bit heart healthier. So I've cut back. But yeah, just straight up Jack's beef jerky is incredible.
All right. I don't know if they have that at Costco or not.
They probably have, I mean, I'm sure they have some kind of jerky. I just don't know if they carry Jack's or if they have like their own kind of jerky.
Yeah. I stand for Costco. They've got everything there. And it's the other thing too that's great about Costco. I don't like leaving the house very often. Right. I'm a busy man. I've got a lot of time sitting in my office watching games on TV and whatnot. You go to Costco, you buy anything and they give you an egregious amount of it. Right. You go there, it's like, oh, I wanted toilet paper. Cool. Here's 70 rolls of toilet paper for $3. If people want to know why during the pandemic there wasn't any toilet paper available, it's because Costco bought all of it. I'm fairly sure. Don't fact check me. Over at 14 did leave us a super chat here. How much Fontecchio and Kleber do you have? I have a good amount of Fontecchio. He's my was he my third most rostered Jazz player? Fourth. So of the Jazz players I have the most exposure to, it's THT, Kessler, Dunn, and then Fontecchio. But still, it gets him into nearly half my lineup. So I like Fontecchio a good amount. Overall, there's just a lot of Jazz players to like today, but that's somebody who I think is one of the better value plays on the slate for sure. Maxi Kleber, I don't think I played Kleber. Yeah, I don't have exposure to Maxi. Do you?
I don't either. Nope. Zero Kleber.
Too much good value to get to Maxi. Too much good value. All right, let's find some of the top plays over but Kevin Huerter just ruled out. Trey Lyles is available to play. Kevin Huerter matters for the Kings. I don't know he's going to impact my lineups that much, though.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Let's see. What are the prices on the Kings?
Let's see. Where's Terrence Davis price now?
4,000. So he's up quite a bit.
I'm probably going to end up playing some of Terrence Davis. You know what's annoying about Terrence Davis? Is he's such a good pointsman and fantasy producer, but he gets to these spots sometimes where it's like, hey, Kevin Huerter's out. Terrence Davis is going to play 16 minutes, and he may or may not crush in those minutes.
Right.
Now, the last game, he actually played extended minutes. He ended up getting up to 20. Oh, no, he played 30 minutes last game. He also shot the ball extremely well. I always feel like Terrence Davis is overowned in these spots.
Yeah, I was really surprised last time. He only came in at like 11% ownership after throughout the day he had been one of our higher projected ownership players. Was coming down closer to when the game started, but he ended up being way lower owned than I was anticipating. And then of course he crushed it. So yeah, he's interesting.
So I'm going to end up getting exposure to Terrence Davis. I assume I'm going to end up with less than the field, though. After the game he had last time, I think the field is going to flock to him. I think he probably ends up going over owned. So he'll be in my player pool, but not as much as what I think the field will do with him. And I don't know what to make of Malik Monk either. Like Malik Monk is going to be, I think he's too expensive for me at this point because for whatever reason, Malik Monk is the first man off the bench for the Kings. Until somebody gets ruled out, his role gets lessened somehow. Like, remember we had that slate where he was fairly popular with De'Aaron Fox out 2 weeks ago or something like that, 3 weeks ago. And Monk plays 5 minutes. It's like the least he's played in months. And it was a game that De'Aaron Fox was at. So I never know what to make of his minutes. But I don't think I'm going to be getting to a ton of him. We've seen his price come up. Like I mentioned, he's $5,500 over on DraftKings. FanDuel, we've got Monk now priced at, where's Monk's price? I can't spell anybody's name correctly today. All right, Malik Monk over on FanDuel is priced also at $5,500. It's just more of a fair price for a guy who we've seen does not typically see a massive minutes boost in these kind of scenarios.
Yeah,
So
the 5,500.
And just to reiterate, Kevin Huerter out, Trey Lyles is in for everybody. Is there anything else that stands out to you from the Kings, given the news of Kevin Huerter being out?
Not really. I think that Terrence Davis, goes from being unplayable to being sort of interesting. And then I think, maybe a slight boost to Malik Monk, but at 5,500, it's a little bit tough to really want to get there. Yeah, I don't see anybody that like becomes a must play for Sacramento.
Some early results from this game. We are 3 minutes into the Pacers game. Miles Turner's 8 points, 2 rebounds, and a block. Seems good.
Yep.
Seems good. I'm happy with that. From the other side of the game for the Hornets, I could get behind this. 0 stats for PJ Washington. Kelly Oubre has 5 points and a steal. If Kelly Oubre is going to be the guy who gets all the production for the Hornets and nobody else does anything, I'll be happy with that. I could take it. And
I don't like
it. Super chat from Pierre. Fox or Kyrie on FanDuel. With them being about the same price on FanDuel, I lean towards Kyrie Irving. Totally different on DraftKings. Fox is one of my most rostered players on the slate. So I think he's underpriced at $8,200. The $9,500 price on FanDuel, still a playable price, but I do like Kyrie more than him on FanDuel. Now let's finally build out those NHA cards. And guys, like I said before, if you haven't signed up yet, go sign up on NHA using our link below. It's going to get you to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. You can also use the promo code Greg. If links are too complicated for you, just the name Greg, Greg. That'll do the same deal for you. $100 bonus on your first deposit. And we got projections that Neil and I are going to walk through to help you find some of the best prop lines over at NHA. Do you have this pulled up in front of you, Neil, or not quite yet?
Oh yeah, 1 second. I was almost there.
Okay. Yeah, all good. I will kick us off then to give you my favorite prop over on NHA, and then we'll go back to Neil, and he'll give his favorite, then we'll try to build out a card that way. The first one I'm looking at, and we've seen this a bunch of times with Rudy Gobert when he's listed as questionable for games as of late, is we'll just see some of his prop projections really low. I like over 10.5 rebounds for Rudy Gobert. You mentioned it before about how good of a rebounder he's been this year, especially with Karl-Anthony Towns out. We're not seeing quite the same blocks from Rudy Gobert as we've seen in the past, but the rebounds have certainly been there for him. There's also no Anthony Edwards. Edwards is a pretty good rebounder for a wing player. I think that should benefit Gobert. Over 10.5 rebounds. That's my favorite prop anywhere on NHA.
Yeah, I mean, sign me up for that one. Obviously, he is questionable, so it's 50-50 whether he plays.
Well, no, he's available now.
Oh yeah. I was making a joke anyway, but yeah, he is available now. So that you can fire that one up confidently. I'm looking at this Emmanuel quickly. Points under 13.5. It's hard because everybody always goes off against the Timberwolves. So but just based on the math, that looks like a pretty solid play there for Emmanuel quickly. Looks like that is our top bet on the board here, averaging 13.6 points per game this season. What do we have his minutes at today? Because we got Jalen Brunson back.
So Eric Johnson, none of your messages are going to be unmuted.
Yeah, we have Emmanuel quickly at just 25.5 minutes today. We're not expecting big minutes here. I think I like that under. And, obviously if our tools like it, I'm probably going to trust in them. And here we have that one, the under on 13.5 hitting 56% of the time. We have a projection of just 12.1 points for Emmanuel Quickly. So I do like the under there.
Makes sense to me. And another one that projects well for us. It actually does project slightly better even than the Rudy Gobert one. But personally, I like the Gobert one the best. I think that's a very safe prop line to look at, that over 10.5 rebounds for Rudy Gobert. So we've got a couple of them here. A couple of them locked in to NHA. What else do I want to look at? What else? 14.5 points looks like a pretty lofty number for Jaden McDaniels. I know that,
especially with Jalen Noel back. I agree with you. That looks a little bit high.
I know that there's no Anthony Edwards, and that's going to help his scoring a little bit. And he's had a few good games lately. Some of it's been fueled by overtime as well. Like 2 games ago, how much stock we're putting into a game where he played 45 and a half minutes, my bad, because it went into double overtime. For the season, McDaniels as a starter is averaging 12 points per game, right around where we have him projected. It's going to be the under of the 14.5 points on him.
What do you think of this? I kind of like this Mike Conley over 5.5 assist line. I just think he's going to be so involved in the offense with Ant out. 5.5 feels a little bit low for Mike Conley for me, and our tools like it as well.
All right.
The over.
4-leg parlay, 11x. That looks pretty good to me. We've got Rudy Gobert over 10.5 rebounds. We've got Emmanuel Quickly under 13.5 points. We've got Jalen McDaniels for under 14.5 points. And then finally, Mike Conley for the over 5.5 assists. But I love how we got Jordan highlighting everybody with his mouse as we went over all of them at the end there.
Really nice touch. That's why he is one of the top 50 producers in the game.
Or so, right? We're kind of rounding.
Yeah, I'm being a nice guy. I'm giving him a little bit more credit than he probably deserves.
Like everything else, it's subject to rounding errors. But Jordan's up there. Top 75 for sure.
Absolutely, top 75.
For sure. I'm curious, do we have updated projection on Terrence Davis yet? Curious to see where we ended up coming in on him. Always tough to figure out his minutes. We've done a very good job projecting Terrence Davis this year, though, on the whole. So that's why I'm curious to circle back and check out what our projection is on him. Let's look at some more of the early results from the basketball games. I noticed that Miles Turner got his block stat corrected. It got moved to Neesmith. I knew because immediately a bunch of people in chat said, "You're wrong. He didn't have a block. You're wrong."
Yeah.
So now we know. Now we know that is not the case. But I assume he's still off to a good start. Let's see what's happening. Yeah, Miles Turner up to 10 points and 2 rebounds and no personal fouls, which is big for him. And then on the other side of the game, we do have the Hornets getting back into it a little bit. We've got Nick Richards up to 2 points and 4 boards. PJ Washington is 3 points, no other stats. Kelly Oubre, the high man there, 7 points and a steal for Kelly Oubre. So that's what we've got going on in the early game so far. Oh, at least that game. There was another 7 o'clock game as well. I was paying less attention to that one. Bulls and 76ers. Listen to this line. In 7 minutes, Vooch has 5 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 steals.
3 steals.
Swiping the ball from Joel Embiid left and right. I guess it's spread out the turnovers. But Embiid off to a decent start in his own right. 8 points, 5 rebounds, and an assist. So not as good of a start as Vooch, but Embiid's still serviceable right there. Is there anybody that you are really pulling for in that 76ers Bulls game?
I guess Embiid, at least I think I am. I should double check what my actual ownership ended up being on Embiid. But he's probably number one. Patrick Williams only came at 4% ownership. My guess is that I'm above the field on that. Let me take a look, actually. I did not double check. Yeah, okay, so I ended up with 20% Embiid, so I'm a little bit over the field there. Patrick Williams, okay, I only have 10% Patrick Williams, so slightly above the field there as well, but nobody that I have like a ton of exposure to.
We've only got a few minutes left here, but make sure to keep an eye on all the news the rest of the night. You never know where that may end up going as far as NBA goes. Although we did get most of the key news out of the way already, you know, maybe the Jazz starting lineup can end up being a little weird, but no key players are currently questionable on the injury report. For myself, I'm going to be hanging out on Chalkboard tonight. If you guys haven't checked out our Chalkboard channel, a couple reasons to be involved. First off, it's free. That's a pretty good price, right, Neil?
I like free. That's actually my favorite price, other than getting paid.
Yeah. So the only person here who can't afford free is Eric Lindquist because he's a negative balance in his bank account. So if you go up to Eric and say, "You want to join this, thing for free?" I can't afford free. He doesn't have enough money. But other than him, pretty much anybody could join something for free. It's free to download the app. It's free to get into our channel. It's been Lofty and I posting in there pretty constantly, posting a lot of bets, answering you guys' questions. Like I said, totally free. Click on the link below because there's no downside to you. You get.
I like this comment from Brad Clayton. Is the chalkboard named after Lindquist?
Oh, good point.
That's a burn. That's a good burn.
No, because it's too expensive for him. It's free.
Oh, yeah. Couldn't name it after him.
Would get a super chat from Collie Poston. Nobody talking about Kyle Anderson. He a bad idea against the Knicks. I have exposure to Kyle Anderson. We talked about him a little bit before. The reason earlier in the day people probably didn't talk about Kyle Anderson is because we just didn't know if Edwards was playing or not.
Yeah, no, I think he's a very solid play. He's getting we're projecting him for 10% ownership. So not like he's going completely overlooked. That feels about right to me. He's had some great games recently. Obviously should have more usage with no Ant, but his price tag at 6,900 is, I think it's a reasonable price tag. The ownership's getting there. So I think he's a decent play, but not like standing out to me as some great play.
Yeah, and I will post because I saw some people asking for the chalkboard link in chat. Oh, Jordan's all over it. I was going to post it. I could have done that as well. But yeah, we'll throw that into chat so some people could get in there as well. But 3-ish minutes left to go here before we wrap up. And I also just want to read out to you guys some of our best bets overall for the night. I'm curious to look at some of the overall just other sports books that we have. And this is one of the other tools we have, NBA Bet Pro. If you guys aren't able to play, like I can't play Prize Picks in New Jersey. It's not a site that operates in New Jersey, but I do get access to DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, all of those sports books. And we have data for all of them in NBA Bet Pro. And we do have a 7-day free trial available for that right now. I'm going to read off our top EV bet. This is a little bit of free information for everybody. This is how we're going to close the show, Neil. I'm going to give out my favorite, our tools' favorite free bets across each site tonight. DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM. And then we'll call it a night.
For free.
All for free, just like chalkboard. Over on DraftKings, our top bet right now is Emmanuel Quickley under 13.5 points. Also one that we liked for NHA purposes. Over on FanDuel, our number one bet right now is Tyus Jones over 1.5 threes. It's actually one that I bet earlier in the day as well and posted in our chalkboard channel. But Tyus Jones over 1.5 threes. We've got him projected for 1.9. He's actually averaging 2.1 as a starter this year, so seems about reasonable to me. And then finally, our number one prop over at BetMGM, Rudy Gobert over 10.5 rebounds. Talked about him before. I think that's a really good line, at least for our purpose. I don't know why sportsbooks are setting Rudy Gobert's rebound prop at only 10.5. Gobert this year, let's see, what is Gobert averaging for rebounds per game? Gobert is averaging 11.5 rebounds per game. Over the last week, that is 12.3. Over the last month, 11.2. Just doesn't really make sense that he would ever have a 10.5 rebound average. And he's in a matchup against the Knicks tonight. So that's going to do it for us today. If you guys want to check out more of those bets, go look at NBA Bet Pro. Chalkboard, totally free. We've got that link dropped in there if you guys want to hang out with Lofty and I. And, did we just get a super chat? Oh, no, that's the same one from Collie Poston. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you didn't do it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Have a great night. And I'm actually off tomorrow. I'll see you guys Wednesday, though. Good night.